across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and a very good evening to you. Well, the first salvo has been fired in what will turn out to be a global trade war. Donald Trump has set his stall out and it's going to cost. It's going to cost the American people if they continue to import, and it's going to cost other industries around the world. Many of the stock markets are closed at the moment, so we don't know what their reaction is going to be. So far, the American markets, we'll talk to our economist in just a moment about that, but they seem to be slightly unfazed by this, I guess because we all knew it was coming. But what will those countries do? China's not going to take a 34% tariff sitting down. We know that. We know the EU is getting ready to fire back. Nothing that Donald Trump does is going to make us buy chlorinated chicken, or the EU to buy chlorinated chicken, or Australia to buy their beef, which they believe is substandard. So it's not so much that people have been ripping America off. It's just that we don't want to buy what they're selling. Their cars too. We can't have those massive, great big cars in these European cities and in the country because A, we can't afford to put petrol in them, and B, they're just not built for the way that we live. So there's a lot of things wrong with what the US is trying to sell. However, it is going to have an effect. And 10% on Britain. Already, number 10 has come out and said that vindicates our approach, the fact that we only got a 10% punch on the nose. But this is supposed to be one of our closest allies. This is supposed to be our great buddy, the United States of America. And we're just bending over, just going, oh, thank you. Thank you for not hitting me as hard as you might have hit me, although there's still 25% tariff, obviously, on any cars that are bought into the United States of America. So, has he been short-sighted? Is this genius? I mean, listening to Donald Trump, you would be persuaded that this is the most brilliant thing that any president has ever done for his country. And that this is really going to set America up almost immediately with billions and trillions of dollars and hundreds and thousands of jobs. But what is the lead time? How long is it going to take? And what happens when those countries that he needs punch back? Germany is already saying, you know, all those parts that you buy from us for your cars that you need to build, going to cost you. So this is, make no mistake about it, like I said, the first salvo in a global trade war where nobody wins. Pretty much like traditional war, to be honest, unless you're Vladimir Putin. So we're going to be discussing that. We're going to be getting reaction, hopefully, from some of those countries a little bit later on through the programme, and keeping an eye on comments and statements and things that are going to... This is going to impact us, absolutely no doubt about it. It's going to impact every country in the world. Every country in the world now has got a 10% tariff on it, and those that he particularly is angry with have gone up and up and up. We're still trying to work out whether they are plus, so on top of the tariffs that we're already being charged, because that wasn't made clear by the President of the United States, whether these were on top of existing tariffs or whether these are in total. That is quite important. In fact, it's incredibly important because that will make quite a big difference. So this is our mate, our friend. What about our special relationship with America? What do we think about that now? I suppose you're thinking, well, 10%, that's not that bad. 25% on cars. People are going to lose their jobs. He's our friend. Hate to be an enemy, huh? So I'd like to hear from you. If you do want to pitch in on this, I'd love to hear your voices on this and that special relationship that we have with America. Should we continue to be Donald Trump's poodle? Do we continue just to go, yes, sir, please can I have some more, sir? Thank you very much, sir. Or do we stand up and say, well, you know that stuff you tried to sell us? We've given away hundreds of millions in tax breaks, by the way, to America, to American tech firms, in order to get this punch in the face. So, I would like to hear from you. Do you still believe in the special relationship that Britain had with the US? The number 0344 499 1000. You can message me as well. I'd love it if you did. Put the word talk and then your message to 87222. The rest of the programme, we have got Russ Kane in going through the papers for Thursday, so he'll be here. Andy Lound, Mr. Spaceman, will also be here. He is going to be telling us all the latest stuff from the universe. Dr. Amir Khan and Timmy Alexis Carrington-Ward. Now, they were the ones taking the weight loss jabs, and we've been following their journey. This is the last instalment to find out how they've been getting on with it and whether they would recommend it to anybody else. So if you were thinking of going on the weight loss drug, then hopefully you've been following this journey. We've got some before and after pictures as well, if you're watching. So that would be great too. So that's all coming up, but first let's address what we've just heard from Donald Trump in the United States of America in the Rose Garden. So he's announced those international levies on every country in the world. And joining us now to discuss this is Laurie Laird, economist and US political commentator. Laurie, a very, very good evening to you.
Petrie.
I described this as the first salvo fired in a global trade war. Just how bloody could this get, and in your view, will get?
Look, I think that the markets, weirdly, will breathe a sigh of relief. This isn't quite as bad as the worst case scenario that people were sort of working up to. There's been some movement in the financial markets. The dollar is a tiny, tiny bit weaker, but not significantly so. And bond yields, U.S. bond yields, are actually coming down about 0.4 of a percentage point across all maturities. Doesn't sound like much, but that's a pretty big move, particularly at a time when these things aren't widely traded. There's a little bit of trading in Asia in these securities. But what that tells us is people do not believe that this is going to be hugely inflationary, at least for the U.S. So there's no big sell-off of U.S. assets. So investors are sort of saying, whoa, we thought this could have been a lot worse. Now, you're asking exactly the right question. What happens next? How do people retaliate? As you said, the UK has said, hey, we're on the lower end of this because we didn't do anything. That gives you the sense that the UK has no plans to retaliate. Europe has been much more aggressive and has said we've already prepared lists, and they've said that they've prepared lists coming from products that are made in Republican districts in the U.S. So they're very targeted on what they plan to put tariffs on. So you're right. The next step is where things get to be really confusing when you see retaliation. Now, the other thing to think about is, let's take the case of China. Instead of taking exports that were aimed for the U.S., a lot of these exports, let's use steel as an example, that may be redirected. So there'll be more cheap Chinese steel coming into the UK, coming into the EU, which puts local producers of steel and UK steelmakers are really having a time of it, puts them at an even greater disadvantage. So it's not just the higher sticker price. It's also where trade goes. And that can really mess with economies all over the place.
So, I mean, look, are we going to see countries now try to circumnavigate the US. I mean, Canada and the UK have been talking, Canada and the EU have been talking. Donald Trump says, if you lot get together, I'm going to hit you even harder with tariffs. But will we start to see, as we saw with Japan, South Korea and China, in a really surprising move, get together and say, right, collectively, what can we do back?
Well, there are a lot of things that can be done if countries do want to work together. You know, the EU, the UK are completely powerless. It depends on whether these countries want to stand up to Trump. And, you know, I think internationally we're seeing what's happening in the US. Congress won't stand up to Trump. Business will not stand up to Trump. Everybody seems to be petrified, but there are some levers that the UK or the EU could use. Things like not allowing tech firms to operate here, you know, revoking licenses of people like Meta, of people like Amazon. Europe owns something called SWIFT. SWIFT is a messaging service that allows global banks to speak to each other. They can't speak to each other. They can't move money from account to account. That's in Belgium. The EU could prevent U.S. banks from accessing SWIFT. It's a massive, massive penalty. But America's trading partners are not without levers here. They just have to be courageous enough to use them.
Okay, so let's turn back to the tariffs. A lot of what Donald Trump was saying there in the Rose Garden was that this is going to make America incredibly wealthy. Now, what I see as the downside of that statement is that we're trying to sell a car to an American, and it's now going to cost 25% more to the American, right? They can choose not to buy that, and then the car gets returned to the UK. I'm using very simple terms here. The car then comes back, right? So they've chosen not to buy it because it's more expensive. How does that make that American wealthier?
You probably want an educated answer there, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't. You know, in Donald Trump land, it seems to be if Americans don't buy Range Rovers, JLR will set up a really big plant, hopefully in a Republican district, make these Range Rovers in, say, Tennessee, and that's where Americans will buy their Range Rovers. But a plant can't be magicked up overnight.
No, that was my other point as well. It is, look, I'm stunned that people aren't seeing these tariffs as an inflationary pressure on the US, because I can only imagine that there will be goods from China, for example. That,
you can't help yourself with that.
I can't help myself. That people will still want to keep buying, and particularly before that refrigerator company has been rebuilt and set up, and they've found the technicians and the skill base to build those refrigerators and build them cheaply.
Skill base is important. That skill base is really important. The unemployment rate in the U.S. is just over 4%. You're always going to have some degree of unemployment. You're always going to have some people of working age who don't want to work. Maybe they're mothers, maybe they're caring for elderly, maybe they don't have to work. So that 4% rate is what economists call the natural rate of unemployment. It's pretty low. Put this in perspective, there are just under 2 million people claiming unemployment benefits at the moment in the U.S. Now, not everyone without a job claims unemployment benefits, but it's a reasonable proxy for how many people aren't working. There are 7.7 million vacancies, right? So Donald Trump and his team paint this picture. Actually, we see it here in the UK a little bit as well. We're going to create jobs. We're going to create jobs. Good jobs. No one's telling us who's going to take these good jobs. Who's going to build these factories? Who's going to staff these factories?
But it's also a case of all of the things that Donald Trump is talking about will take time, even if all that money, and I'll come to that in a moment, does come into the US in order to avoid these tariffs. But you still got American workers building, let's say a fridge, let's stick with the fridge, right, that at the moment you can buy for $100 from China. So you've then, you know, a couple of years down the road, you've found the skilled workers. I don't know where, under a rock somewhere, I don't know, where they've been hiding. You've got them working in a factory in America, and they're charging $25 an hour to build that fridge. And that fridge now is suddenly $250 American dollars and not $100 coming from China. So again, the question is, how is that not inflationary?
Well, I mean, certainly you brought up a fantastic point that even with the tariff, the relative cost of a Chinese-made fridge is going to be much cheaper. Because you know, a certain percentage, it depends on the product, but as a rule of thumb, about 2/3 of the price of any product is labor cost.
Yeah.
So when you have a massive differential between U.S. and Chinese wages, even with those tariffs, you know, you might need a 50%, 60% tariff to make the price of these two things commensurate. And as you say, once you find the people, you know, once you lift the rock to find the person who's going to build these fridges. So yes, it could become inflationary. But you know what? Economists don't seem to be as worried about the inflationary aspect. Economists seem to be much more worried about how this will slow growth down. Because if people stop buying things, about 2/3 of the U.S. economy is made up of consumer spending. If people say, wait a second, that's a lot more expensive than I want to pay, I won't buy that new refrigerator. I won't buy an extra pair of trainers. And since I'm pinching pennies, I might not go out for something to eat tonight. This is what slows an economy down. And economists are much more worried about how the economy will slow rather than how quickly prices will go up. Add to this that if prices are elevated because of these tariffs and the economy slows, the central bank, the Federal Reserve, is going to be reluctant to reduce interest rates because of these elevated prices. And the Fed has already been in Donald Trump's sights, and as Donald Trump has said, the head of the Federal Reserve is not a smart man. He should be cutting rates. That policy lever will not be available to the Federal Reserve, even if prices are rising and growth is slowing.
Right, we're going to take a very quick break here, Laurie, but when we come back, I do want to talk to you about all this sort of promised money coming into America, according to Donald Trump, because they want to avoid those brilliant tariffs. So we're back in just a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and we are at the moment talking to Laurie Laird, who's an economist and US political commentator. Laurie, thanks for waiting. As I said just before the break there, Donald Trump made a lot about all of the companies, the billions, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of businesses that were coming into the US simply because of the tariffs that he's only just announced. But they're 100% secure, and I'm fascinated.
They're investing like no one's ever seen before.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm fascinated by that because the one thing I know from my days doing a similar job to the one that you did, I wasn't quite an economist, but I did the financial stuff for a few years. The one thing that I think I learnt about stock markets and CEOs, interviewing hundreds of them over those years, is that they like stability. And I cannot imagine that if I were a CEO that I would go anywhere near US soil to set up a factory when I don't know what Donald Trump is going to do tomorrow, and how that is going to impact me bringing in parts that I might need or getting the staff that I might need. You know, even like you said, people to build the factories with all the cheap labour being thrown out of the US.
Right.
How do I pay for that? I'm not sure that I mean, I've got no reason to disbelieve the guy. He's never lied in his life. So, you know, what I don't know why.
Not only that, he almost revels in this variability. You know, he'll say things like, "We're thinking of 25%, but maybe we'll be nice."
Yeah.
You know, that's something he gets a real kick out of.
But as a CEO, I'm not sure that I would be investing.
Okay,
in
you
America.
can't. You can't commit. You know, $500 billion. Have you noticed this administration loves the sum 500 billion?
Yeah.
That's always the number that's thrown about. And we have seen a couple of, I think it was the head of SoftBank, which is a Japanese internet firm, essentially, use that number. We're going to throw in 500 billion. No one's going to put that kind of money into an economy that's run by such a variable team. You know, there's going to be a change of government in 4 years' time, although Donald Trump says perhaps not. Maybe he will stick around. So you have that anyway, but you have a person who's changing policy on a daily basis. That scares investors actually more than the absolute level of tariffs. One thing that was notable is Trump today didn't say, okay, if they're naughty again, you know, we'll increase those tariffs, because that's something he has said in the past. I think that may increase confidence that this is something that companies can work with. But if there's a retaliation, if the EU says, okay, we're now 50% on bourbon, Kentucky bourbon, then does Trump escalate?
I mean, I think that we have every reason.
The guy who relishes the battle.
Yeah, I think we have every reason to speculate that he would retaliate. He doesn't, like I said, he doesn't want the UK and Canada to start any trade dealing, you know, and he's saying, you know, we're your friend and you're going behind our back and setting up deals, and I will be very angry if you do that. The interesting thing is, for me politically at the moment, though, is Canada, because Canada, this 25%, I know Donald Trump and Mark Carney have said that they will talk as and when an election is won by Mark Carney, but at the moment it's 25%. Now that, as you've said before, cars go backwards and forwards across that imaginary line, as Donald Trump calls it.
And there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been explained yet.
Yeah.
I mean, this is only half-baked policy. And this is a perfect example. Canada sends something like 69% of its exports to the U.S. A lot of these are car and car parts. But as a car is being assembled, it's going back and forth across the border. Will that 25% be imposed with every time it crosses? Not entirely clear. It's not clear that Donald Trump even understands, you know, that's how cars are assembled. There are so many questions about, you know, what is actually happening. You brought up one yourself, the Chinese tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs that were announced earlier, just an hour ago. Is that on top of the 10% was already there? That's not entirely clear.
That's not been made clear at all. And that is a significantly important thing that should have been made clear. But I mean, the Premier of Ontario, who's already been very vocal, my understanding is he's already applying a 25% tariff on fuel or electricity going over to America. So those states that rely on Canadian electricity will be paying more.
Oh, absolutely. And there are a lot of bits in the U.S. that rely on Canadian oil, Canadian electricity. Donald Trump likes to say that America's oil independent, and America does produce pretty much as much oil as it consumes in a day. But oil is not necessarily fungible. There are different blends of oil, and a lot of oil that's used in the upper Midwest, it comes from Canada. It's a heavier oil. The refineries that process that oil are set up to process a certain sort of blend. Refineries that are in the south of America process another sort of blend. So you can't take the stuff coming out of the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America.
No, we don't say that here.
Well, then you are not allowed in the Oval Office.
I know. I'm not going, don't worry. I'm not allowed in America.
That's not the only reason that you're not going to be allowed in the Oval Office, is it?
I'm going to tell you what, Laurie, I would be stopped at the border. There's no way I'd be allowed in.
But you can't take that Gulf oil and send it up to the refineries in the Midwest. They're not set up to process that. So it's not so simple as let's take all the oil out of the ground and give it to Americans. It's not like that. A lot of these refineries, a lot of households, a lot of petrol stations in the upper Midwest depend on this Canadian oil.
It's going to be fascinating.
Feel like this, it doesn't feel like this has been thought out.
Listen, Laurie, I'm going to let you go because I know you've got to talk to somebody else in just a moment, but you will be back with me at midnight, and we're going to be looking at the responses from people around the world, because they will start to come in. Laurie, thank you very much indeed. Laurie Laird there. We will be back with her at midnight. Just some reaction from politicians in the UK. The government has said it will remain calm and committed in doing a deal to mitigate the impact of those tariffs. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds adds it'll do everything necessary to defend the UK's national interest. I'm just hearing blah, 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 aren't you? The Tories are calling it disappointing news that'll worry families across the country. And the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, urging Britain to stand firm with allies against what he calls President Trump's attempts to divide and rule. I wonder if you agree with that. Do you agree with Ed Davey there, that actually there comes a point where we have to stop sucking up to Donald Trump? I mean, for goodness sake, just because a bully doesn't punch you as hard as he's punched everybody else doesn't make him your friend. There'll be more on this story as we go through the evening and into the morning. But for now, I'm going to take a very quick break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. Just a reminder that coming up we have Andy Lowndes talking space, and we also have Russ Kane, who's going to be going through the papers. I wonder what the front pages will be full of. Hard to imagine. Anyway, before all of that, we have been following the journey because these weight loss jabs, of course, you can't open particularly not a Daily Mail without seeing a story daily about weight loss jabs. Everybody's talking about them, and anybody that you've seen who's looking a little trimmer recently is on them, even when they say, no, it's all exercise and diet. I've been, oh gosh, I've been so busy exercising. But we've been following two men on their journey with taking a weight loss jab. And over the last few months, we've been learning about some of the side effects, some of the downsides, and some of the upsides. So let's introduce you to them once more. Arma Khan, who's an aesthetic and longevity doctor from Harley Street Skin Clinic. Arma, lovely to see you. And Timmy Alexis Carrington-Ward, broadcaster and host of Here She Is show. What's it called again? Oh, Here She Is. It's on YouTube. Yeah.
Here she is.
Here she is. Yeah.
Horrible lady.
I'm only joking. I mean,
have you ever thought of wearing green?
No, but I did. This is leopard print. Look.
You look like the Hulk.
Thank you. That's incredibly kind. Don't you start laughing, Arma. You were the decent person in this relationship. Now, first of all, Arma, let's come to you. How you've been on this journey now for a few months. How have you done?
Really well. I've obviously lost weight. I've got more energy, and I just feel better about myself.
What, the way you look, or you just feel healthier generally?
I'm feeling healthy. I'm feeling like I used to feel before I put all that weight on.
Oh, wow.
Looking back on some of the pictures, you can see I was carrying quite a lot of weight. I didn't realise I was carrying that much weight.
Is that you at the beginning of the journey, Arma?
Yeah.
Are you joking? That's 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Wow, that is a big change, isn't it?
Mm.
Hey, fatty bum bum.
Don't you start. We haven't seen your pictures yet. It's very difficult to say, would you recommend it? Because you need to take into account a lot of people's, their personal circumstances, their health journey, and all of those things. But we often hear, which is why I wanted to do this journey with two men. It's usually women that talk about a weight loss issue. Do you think that you would have done this without the jabs, Arma?
I've always trained, and I've always been fit. So even before I started my journey of becoming overweight, I was very active. And really since COVID and being busy at work, being busy with grandchildren, there are always excuses why you can't train. And becoming lazy with what I ate. I think it's just a vicious cycle that we fall into. And we always give excuses. So this was a great kickstart. I'm eating better now. I'm training. I'm drinking less. All of those things that I was doing before as a habit, which I'd replaced with new habits. So part of this journey isn't just losing weight on a medication. It's about changing our habits again and making them into our new lifestyle.
Does it worry you when you've completed your journey? I don't know if you've decided you've gone far enough that you will just put it back on. That without that help, that you might just fall back into those bad habits. Because bad habits, we tend to fall into them over a long period of time, and good habits they need equally long to fall into them.
Absolutely, and I'm going to carry on with this because what we have is a 4-staged program. And the first stage is medication. And it's getting somebody on, assessing them properly, getting them onto the medication, watching their weight loss. So there's medication, there's stabilization on that medication, that's stage 2. Then comes a habitualization, which is changing those habits. And that can take a bit longer. That can take another 6 months. So this journey can take between 6 months, a year, and with some people, even up to 18 months. So the habitualization is really important, where their new habits, their new choices become a matter of just doing it and not active thinking. It's subconscious. And then the 4th stage is withdrawal of the actual medication.
So would you microdose then, this term microdosing? So wherever you are now, with that habitualization stage that you're talking about, which could be for a year, would you go back down to the lowest level that still works for that long?
That would be the goal. That would be absolutely the goal. Yeah. And I think we have to, again, gauge it by the responses. So once we've achieved our weight goals, and it's not just weight, what we're monitoring is your lean body mass, your bone mass, your muscle mass. And I think it's really important to do that, because if you're just losing weight, you're going to be losing those as well. Now, bone mass is slower to lose because it's sort of really hard, whereas muscle mass you can lose quite quickly. And, there's going to be an inevitable muscle loss unless we start to adjust our diets with a higher protein in our diets to support that muscle, and also exercising. And there are different types of exercises that are important to maintain muscle mass and bone mass. So part of that education is talking about the diet, the nutrition, talking about the right type of exercises, and then monitoring it as well on a monthly basis.
It's really interesting. Let's turn to you now, mate. So for you, how has the journey been for you for this 3 months so far?
Okay, so the first 2 months, I thought I hadn't lost any weight, and I was really surprised when I went in to Dr. Khan and he weighed me, and I had lost half a stone each month.
Right, we're looking at pictures of you, but I can't. Which one is the before picture?
You're funny. That's after I gave birth, on the right.
Oh, right, I see.
Yeah.
I mean, it is quite a difference, but I know you, and you're slumping a little bit in the first one.
Yeah, you have to do a little bit, don't you?
Yeah.
I'm big. I want to lose it.
But your neck is really noticeable in your
That was
face.
where, after Christmas, I had a real, wrestler's neck.
You did. I was worried about you.
I know. And that was after Christmas. So anyway, the first 2 months, I lost half a stone a month. This time I went in and I'd only lost 3.5 pounds on it, which I was a little bit, I rang you straight away, didn't I? I was a bit disappointed. I was embarrassed. I felt fat shamed.
Yes, you did. You felt that Armour had fat shamed you, even though it was your journey.
And he started doing exercises in front of me. I think that's what it was, exercises. But he was doing some movements I hadn't seen him do before. But I had to do that as well. So I've upped my game on doing exercises a little bit. But I would say, through doing it through this clinic, and I want to speak to Dr. Khan about this, of why I didn't go up the next level. So he's kept us both on the same level. And I haven't actually spoken to him about this, of why I am kept on the same level when I only lost 3.5. He said because I'm getting closer to my proper weight now that I want to get to, that it slows down. But like I said, if I wasn't doing it through a clinic, I would have gone up automatically. I would have thought I'd needed to.
But going up doesn't make you lose more weight. It just counteracts you getting used to the drug.
Well, exactly. What do I know? That's exactly what I mean. So I don't know. In the first 2 months I had, I'm going to call it chronic diarrhea for a couple of days. And I'm also going to say vomiting like The Exorcist.
Yeah.
So those, and I would say from the beginning of this year, when we started, to now, I would have had, I'm going to count up to about a week of not feeling well, but I'm absolutely fine now. Unlike Dr. Khan, I don't feel full of energy or anything, but I look bloody good.
If you say so yourself. But let me ask you the same question. I mean, I've known you for years, so I do know the answer to this, Timothy. But without this jab, what would this have taken you to get to where you are?
Oh, this is absolutely been a different journey. My niece got married, as I said, last year, and it took me 6 months, and it was horrible. It was keeping away from going out, keeping away from places that I would eat and drink, not having anything in the house. This time, like I said, the first 2 months, I have not felt like I'm dieting. Going back to habitually thinking, I have had this on my own, thinking, actually, if I need, because of the 3.5 pounds just gone, I maybe should be helping myself a bit by looking what I'm eating now. So that's come naturally a little bit to me, of, okay, if I want this to continue, I'm going to have to watch what I eat and not just go and buy a Cadbury's cream egg or something.
Or 3. But are you prepared, Timothy, to keep going for a year of the stabilisation level?
I've heard about this stabilisation of, I think, is it like a year or so when your body gets into a habit, or it thinks this is its normal weight? I mean, I'm not the expert. That beautiful man in the middle of us is.
I don't think it's just your body getting used to it. I think that's part of it, but it's your mind getting used to it. And habitualization is forming new habits, replacing old habits with new. You can't get rid of habits. What we have to do is we have to start to make a new way of life our norm, and the way that we eat, our choices. And when that becomes normalized, then we can start to withdraw. And I think, you know, the issue is, once we come off the medication, what doesn't stop is the aging process. And we're going to then, all we've done is we've improved our health, we've extended our wellness during our longevity by reducing the risks of developing various conditions. And there are 42 different conditions that have been shown to improve because of doing this. And, you know, it's not just weight loss or diabetes that it affects. So what we're doing is we're improving our general health. What we've done is bought time. Eventually, time will catch up with us and we'll start to deteriorate again. But then we've got a choice. We can either look at this, or there'll be something new that comes along that will help us to maintain our health.
Yeah, they're looking at tablet form, aren't they, now? I think it's Eli Lilly that is looking to see if they can replace the jab. Listen, guys.
Petrie,
what?
I was just going to say, you need it fast, because you look as if you're deteriorating as I'm watching you. Quicker than anything I've seen.
Shut your face. Although, Armour, I'm going to make an appointment to come and see you about my turkey neck, so we'll do that. Yeah.
We're having a bog off.
I was going to say we're going to get a bog off with you, I think.
Do one.
Yeah. Oh, we can all 3 of us do it. That's great. It's even nicer. Guys, thank you so much, Armour. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you. Timothy, I don't even know what to say to you, but I'll speak to you tomorrow. Thank you both very much indeed. Dr. Armour Khan there, aesthetic and longevity doctor from Harley Street Skin Clinic, and Timmy Alexis Carrington Ward is just my best mate. So there you go. Quick break, back in a second.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and just let you know that Russ Kane will be with me in the studio at the top of the hour to go through the papers for Thursday. But first, my favourite spaceman, Andy Lound, joins us now. Oh my goodness me, that's smart.
Hello, Petrie. Aye, aye.
Aye, aye. What uniform is this?
Cunard uniform from 1912 period. I'm just back from doing a presentation about the RMS Carpathia, the ship that went to rescue the Titanic survivors. So I do it in full costume, obviously. So there's no time to change. So
Well,
there we go. But every
very
woman
smart.
likes a sailor. Eh?
Absolutely, you look absolutely gorgeous. Talk to me about the scientists and deliberately, have they been conning us?
No. This is the James Webb Telescope thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What they did was, what they wanted to do is try to image planets going around other stars. And that's very difficult because they're along the one way away, and the brightness from the star itself outshines the light which is being reflected from the planet. So it's very hard to actually do that. And there's lots of techniques to try to use to do this. The James Webb Telescope is an infrared telescope, so it looks at the infrared wavelength. And this guy who's a PhD, going for his PhD, came up with an interesting idea. We have a thing called a coronagraph. This is where it's if you like, it's a disc usually that you put over a star, usually the sun. So you stop the glare of the sun so you can see the outer atmosphere, the chromosphere, so you can actually observe it. Now, the Webb isn't designed to do this, but what they did was it does have coronagraph systems on board. So what they did was, instead of covering the entire star they were looking at, they decided to offset it slightly. So there is still a little bit of light from the star, but it should be able to work out the light from the star and the frequency of light from planets going around it. This was a long shot test. And what they've been able to do is they've actually resolved planets going around stars, and they've done it for 2 planetary systems, and to such a degree that they can actually then look at the light that's reflected from those planets' atmospheres and work out what those atmospheres are composed of.
Wow.
To be honest, it's a staggering clever trick to do with so what they're doing is they're just trying another way of utilizing the instruments on board the Webb telescope to do something else. This is very common, actually. Scientists in a laboratory will get an existing piece of kit, think, oh, if we use it this way, we'll be able to find something else or do something else with it. And it's just brilliant. Of course, it has meant, of course, that there's now a new technique available for resolving planets going around other stars. It's quite fantastic.
I mean, that's amazing. So that we wouldn't have seen these planets going around these stars if they hadn't been able to do that.
No, there's been detections of planets going around the stars, but in different methods. But what they really wanted to do is have a look at them, resolve them, to have a good look at them. And this is a nice technique to do that. It's interesting because one of the 2 telescopes which are due to be smaller than the Webb telescope, due to go up, are planning to actually do this. What they're designed to actually resolve these planets, and yet the Webb has been able to do it. It's also interesting that planets which contain a great deal of carbon dioxide in their atmospheres, which are quite important to study. Big telescopes on Earth can't actually see those anyway because our atmosphere blocks it. So you've got to have a telescope in space, and this technique has been just breathtaking. This is going to open another whole new era of study for us.
They're very smart, aren't they? They're very clever people. SpaceX has launched Fram2.
Yeah, Fram2, named after the great ship that Nansen and Amundsen used to explore the polar regions. Fram2, a SpaceX spacecraft mission, this is a fantastic mission because for the first time in history, humans have orbited on the polar orbit. That means north to south rather than east to west or at slight angles to it. And therefore, they're able to take observations of the most remote areas on the planet and do some observations of those. Apart from which, of course, they're able to carry out some experiments on board, and one of them is actually going to take an X-ray of a human being in space for the very first time, grow mushrooms in space, look at microgravity. So there's a lot of experiments to carry out while they're up there, and they're 4 rookie astronauts, so they haven't been up before, so it's going to be quite exciting for them. And it's absolutely a brilliant mission to fly polar. I can't believe they haven't done human polar missions before, because it's one of the most interesting things. And if you fly a polar mission, for instance, as a spacecraft goes in a polar mission like that, the Earth rotates underneath you. So at some point you'll actually see every part of the planet.
That really does make more sense, doesn't it, than going the other way. But how long are they up there for, Andy?
Well, they're only up there for a couple of days, so they'll be coming back soon. But they'll be very busy doing their work, and they're splashing down in the Pacific, which is quite interesting, because we spoke before about bits from SpaceX has fallen onto farms and things, and that's why they're dropping them in the Pacific, to try and reduce the possibility of anything dropping onto farmlands or onto Europe or something like that, because they think there's just something about coming back off the coast of Florida, and the angle has left some debris coming over populated areas, and they don't want that, so they're dropping these people in the Pacific.
I mean, amazing thing for these young astronauts to do. Incredible. Talking of astronauts, the NASA astronauts that were left up in space for 9 months have given their first interview.
Yes, Wilmore and Williams, from my point of view, there was nothing surprising out of what they had to say. There really isn't, because they're saying exactly what we all knew. And I think there's only one journalist on the planet who actually, I think, if you don't mind me mentioning his name, Dr. David Whitehouse, absolutely brilliant man. And he was getting it right, talking about it, but he does know his stuff. And they were pointing out that, yes, we weren't stranded in that sense. We discussed what was happening. We knew we had to stay here. They're both military people, and said that's actually the nature of the job sometimes. You actually get stuck somewhere longer than you expected. So they discussed it. And I thought it was quite interesting. Butch Wilmore, when they're asking what do you think went wrong, well, he says, it's not one person did it wrong. He says, he says, there's things I perhaps should have asked, which I didn't think I needed to ask. And he says, there's Boeing and NASA, we're all sort of culpable. So we all need to come together and sort these things out. It's this sensible attitude, an engineering attitude to get things done, which I thought was quite good. And both of them said they felt quite well, actually. I mean, Wilmore had been going out walking his dog and spending time with his family, and William seems to be reasonably healthy, considering the remarks being made by a non-space science doctor who was saying, oh, she looks as if she was wasting away. She hasn't wasted away. She seems to be absolutely fine. But they were pointing out that, yes, they're happy to go again, and they're quite happy to fly up again and do more work up there. And they did say that's the nature of the job. I mean, they were quite happy if they got stuck up there. The only people they said which were unhappy were their families, of course. Yeah. Who they're the ones who actually suffer. I mean, they don't, because they got work to do. They just go up and get their jobs done.
It is interesting to have a look at them, because when they first came out of the pod, and obviously they were very weak, and we saw images, particularly both of the astronauts actually looking very thin and a lot older, but they do seem to have bounced back. I mean, that's remarkable, what the human body can do, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it was interesting seeing Timmy with his weight loss program. Send him into orbit for a bit.
That'll do it. I'd love to. I'd love to.
Yes, it is. They because of course when you're down on Earth, you're eating the foods sometimes you shouldn't eat. Habits. I thought it was a brilliant comment that was about habits. We all have that issue, and of course they put weight on because they're flying into space. That can't happen there because you're limited to what you can eat. It's rationed. It's carefully organised. It's proper balance. And suddenly they're starting to lose weight. They're exercising, so they're losing weight. So if anything, it's a much healthier program that they find themselves on, which is quite interesting. But the body does bounce back well. Cardiovascular issues are always the problem of how the heart readjusts when it gets back down, because they came back and they placed them on the couch type system, which is quite common. That's always been done for long duration space flight, to give your muscles and your bones a chance to adapt. And of course you might feel a little bit giddy. I mean, if you've been ill and stay in bed for a long period of time and you get up, you don't feel suddenly giddy after you come back. That's a similar sort of effect you get from long duration space flight. So they have to just check them, but they seem to be bounced back incredibly well.
Really well, yeah.
Because people have commented on their ages as well, which is always a bit of an ageist issue. But nonetheless, they've commented them, but they've been You know, their age doesn't seem to have played a role here, except for the fact they've flown before, and the body remembers these kind of things to adapt.
How long will they be monitored for, Andy? I mean, is this a lifelong commitment now? Because presumably the scientists will want to know what you're like a year away, 2 years away.
Yes, they are. I mean, career astronauts are monitored constantly for this reason. Even Buzz Aldrin, every so often, is checked. I mean, he's 90 odd now, and he's constantly checked to see, you know, because he's lived to a great age, yet he's flown into space on Gemini spacecraft, and he's been to the moon. And of course, he seems to not to have suffered any major ill effects from doing that work, and they're quite fascinated to see how his body's adapted to it, and he seems to have adapted very well. So yes, there's always a lifelong check, and of course, being ex-military people, of course, military always going through their medical checks at the best of times anyway. So yes, it's a constant monitoring to see if there's any long-term ill effects that happen to it, because the body goes through quite some substantial changes when you're up there, and then they need to know that if we're going to live and work in space, I think the biggest test is going to be quite honest, living and working on the moon for many months at a time will be quite an interesting one. And of course, Musk wants to go to Mars quite quickly, and if that's so, Mars is going to be an interesting game plan, because the gravity is what, 1/3 that of the Earth. It's darker. It's a lot darker out there, so that will be an interesting experience to see
it'll
how
be,
it adapts to that.
Yeah, but the human body is extraordinary, I think. Andy, good evening. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Thank you for joining me. Coming up, of course, we're going to be referring back to these tariffs and this global war trade, but also we've got Russ Kane.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and it's good to have your company. And with me in the studio now is Russ Kane, author and celebrant.
Yes. Yeah.
And you've been very busy.
It's been yes.
I mean, it's not a good business to be busy in, is it?
Well, I do weddings as well. Don't forget, weddings, baby namings, memorial services, not just funerals, but it has been very, very busy with funerals. I mean, like...
You're never going to be out of work with that. It's going to be fine.
I didn't really want to say that, but, you know, it's something that's not going to go out of fashion.
No, it really isn't. You've never seen a broke funeral director. unfortunately.
It'd be interesting when you say that. Anyway.
Right, let's have a look at the papers, because most of them waited until 10 o'clock or at least 9:30 to print their front pages.
Yep.
Trump piles on the tariffs. This is the Times. President Trump has imposed immediate tariffs of 10% on all British exports to the US as he announced a declaration of economic independence for America.
Yep.
On his self-declared Liberation Day, Trump described the tariffs as reciprocal and said he was going to be kind by charging half of each country's total anti-US measures. He then produced a chart showing the rates with the UK calculated to have barriers of 10% but charges at the same level. What do you think of this? Did you watch him doing this?
No.
No.
Because it's economics, so therefore...
Yeah, so it's just like straight over your head. Straight over your head.
I've got stuff to do. I might as well watch old reruns of Frasier.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's not surprising, because his whole thing was put America first. So if you kind of spin the... I'm not excusing it, I'm not an economist, as you know, but he said, I'm going to put America first, America before everybody else in the world. That's what he's done. It's going to be... So it's undoubtedly... didn't do economics at school either, but it's going to help American industry. It's got to, and I would imagine it's going to hugely affect everybody else trying to import. How certain car manufacturers, that's the only thing I can think of.
25%.
Yeah, how they're ever going to sell. I suppose if you're selling, and I'm actually being serious, if you're selling a Bugatti, top of the range, Koenigsegg, you're buying that anyway, you know, Lamborghini. But people like McLaren might suffer. I know it's not first world problems, but normal people, normal cars, BMW, entry-level Mercedes, I don't know, anything else you want to mention, God knows how they're going to do that, because it makes it not so viable to buy.
But it seems that Donald Trump wants to balance out trade deficit.
Yep.
Right. That's what it looks like to me. But a trade deficit isn't a bad thing. It's just a thing that happens because there are, for example, 350 million people in the United States.
Yep.
And if they're buying from the UK with 60 million people in it, then clearly if we're talking, let's say, bread, 350 million people need more bread than 60 million people do. So, you know, because it is one of the world's biggest marketplaces, of course it is going to have deficits around the world, because if it's buying butter from Denmark, then, you know, Denmark isn't going to reciprocate by buying butter from or something from America at the same level, because there aren't the same number of people.
3.5 people in Denmark.
And surely this only works for Donald Trump in terms of him wanting to sell his stuff into other countries. If first of all people want it, and second of all, people don't put tariffs on it. So this could be a trade war.
Oh, it will be. It will,
because then nobody's going to sit back and just take it, right?
They're not going to sit back and go, OK, what's next? What's for lunch?
Well, it looks like Britain is.
What?
Going to just sit back and take it.
I suppose it's interesting, isn't it, that we got hit with 10%, and what did the EU get hit? 25%? 20. Because he hates them.
He hates them. Yeah.
He just hates the EU.
He thinks it was set up to stuff America entirely. That was the only reason it was set up.
Is he wrong? We have to ask. But anyway, you know, he does. I think he's got a personal vendetta against the EU. Well, it's not our problem. It's not our... But I think he was kinder to the UK, which is, I hate to say this, a nod to Starmer in some weird way.
It's a really odd thing. When you're in a toxic relationship and somebody doesn't hit you as hard as they hit the person before, you go, oh, phew, I've got away with it.
Nice. Yes,
but it's still not good.
I'm not saying it's good, but there's degrees of bad.
Well...
yeah, well, there is. Come on, we don't want 20%. Nobody here...
But we've got 25% on one of our major exports, and that's cars. He hasn't adjusted that for us.
Well, let's be serious for a sec. What cars are we going to export that the Americans want? Aston Martin, probably, and Rolls and Bentley. Kind of it. Jaguar, That's going to be a disaster for them, right? And Land Rover, Range Rovers and Land Rovers. That's kind of it from the UK. If you're buying an Aston, maybe, but if you're buying a Rolls Royce,
yeah, but you've still got things like BMW being built here, so they will just, that will still be an export from the UK, or it doesn't matter where from. It'll still be 25%. So the car builders in this country are rightly worried because they could go out of business.
I think it's going to be very difficult. I think I can't see.
But I don't see people just sitting down and taking it and going, "Oh, thank you, Donny."
What are they going to do?
I don't know.
What are they going to do?
Well, China, for example, China.
They're not going to buy a Corvette. No one buys a Corvette.
Nobody's going to buy American cars.
Well, nobody does.
We don't want their toxic chlorinated chicken. We've already told them that. And the food products in the US do not meet the standards that we want to eat over here.
We don't eat their stuff. What do we eat?
We don't eat it because it's not good enough.
There you go. We don't eat it. We don't eat,
But that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to balance the trade deficit by making us buy stuff that we don't want.
That ain't going to work.
Yeah.
People pop into Greggs. They're not really bothered by it. But seriously, what does the average person do? Oh, I'll go into a supermarket, get a sandwich if I've got lunchtime. They're not worried about I can't get American food. Who cares?
No. And also, if we do, I was saying this the other day, if we do buy the chlorinated chicken, right, then Europe stops buying our chicken pies.
Right.
Because they don't want, the food standard isn't good enough.
Right.
For us to be able to sell it to Europe. So they'll just
we
go,
don't buy their chicken. We don't buy American chicken.
No, but we don't buy it because it's chlorinated.
Well, I don't want it at all.
We don't want it, but they want us to have it.
It's exhausted. That's how it's flown over here.
It's exhausted. It's exhausted. So that's...
What is it of this? I mean, somebody's going to probably phone up and say, you don't understand, they're selling us steel or they're selling us stuff we don't see. But if it's stuff that you and I can discuss ad nauseam, food, cars, clothes, what do we do? Levi's.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm wearing them now.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's okay.
Yeah. But, I mean, and you buy a pair of those, every 10 years?
If that, because or my Tesco jeans.
And you wash them even more rarely.
No, that's you. And don't do the sniff test with me. Do not do the sniff test with me. All right?
I don't need to come anywhere near you for the sniff test.
That is so rude.
That was very rude.
That was really,
incredibly
really
rude.
Unfair.
That was
terrible. I like getting up in the middle of the night and being insulted.
I know you do. Anyway. That's the front page of the Times, really. It's going to be, apart from it says that families will be hit, the average working household is set to be £400 worse off this year due to tax policies, bill rises and benefits rising by less than inflation, a think tank has found. Gosh, it must have taken them all of a second to think that. They go, it's going to cost you 400 quid. Right, and can I have some more biscuits, please, and another cup of tea? It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
I mean, the people who are going to be really... I love this language. Am I allowed to use this language? I'm not going to do an impression of his. But interesting, I mean, like, Toyota sell 1 million foreign-made automobiles into the States, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to use his language. Stand by. For decades, this is Donald talking, Donald, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. There's nothing explosive about that. That seems perfectly reasonable to me.
To use the word rape.
Rape.
Yeah.
It's well constructed and well thought out.
Very well.
And pillaged. Presumably they arrived in longboats.
Yeah.
Like a dragon's head at the front.
They just pillaged.
They pillaged
the US.
They arrived in Boston and started pillaging.
It's hard to imagine how the US could have become the economic powerhouse that it has when so many people were stealing from it.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
It is like a Derren Brown trick.
If it was such a disaster until this very moment, it's maybe I don't know, maybe global trade was working. Who knows?
It could, well, anyway, he was kind of said he was going to do it. Now he's gone and done it.
Now he's gone and
done it.
So let's have a look at the I.
Have I got that? Hang on.
That should be your next paper.
Oh yes, you marvellous.
I know. So it's all planned, this programme.
I know, because I worked out with the marvellous Gabs.
Exactly, it's her that plans it. I don't. Right, the I paper. Trump triggers $1 trillion global trade war in a threat to UK jobs and wages. UK hit with 10% import tax and EU 20. As Trump imposes reciprocal tariffs across the world, global trade to suffer as nations plan retaliation, and UK growth predicted to fall to 0. Next year, Britain plans to use King Charles as an apex weapon with Trump to soften the impact of the turmoil.
How's that going to work out exactly?
I don't know, because it hasn't.
Your Majesty, could you do us a favour? What? Could you pop over and sort out the... No. Well, he has offered Donald Trump to be part of the Commonwealth, hasn't he? Has he?
Yeah.
You serious? Is this one of your...
No, I'm really not joking. No, I'm being serious.
Oh, that's your serious.
Yeah.
What, he's offered?
To be a sort of an add-on to the Commonwealth, not actually...
Like a conservatory that wasn't there and you've taken up part of your garden, but you've got a glass roof.
And Trump likes the idea, but I don't know whether he realises that means there will be an actual king, and Congress probably won't like that very much. Since they
Can you imagine?
Since they fought us.
Walking through a minefield of that. Yeah, that's great. And I get to be king. No, Donald, you don't get to be king. We have our own king.
Yeah.
Who's that?
And I think they fought us during independence to get rid of a king.
Never mention it. Never mention it. Have you ever been to Boston?
Boston? No, I'd love to go.
Really?
Not right now.
It's kind of like a bigger version of Hampstead.
It's where they throw all the tea.
It's like Hampstead without the charm. Anyway, that's why I have to... They still bang on up. Oh my God, you think it was yesterday? Anywhere else in America, they couldn't care less. Go to Boston, you think the Tea Party was like last week.
I know, they're really big on it.
They're obsessed
They're
with
obsessed, and quite rightly so.
It's like, move on.
No,
Just
I love
move
it.
on, for God's sake.
No, that's all they think about is chucking British tea in the, in the water. Look, it did the job.
What?
It did the job. We left.
We left. Look, you're going to
ruin our tea.
You're going to soak our tea, mate.
Look, anything else, people, anything you could have thrown in there. Tea.
Too much.
Don't go there.
Not
Don't go. They knew that.
Not happening.
They knew that. White House source says, oh yeah, Elon Musk is to step down.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
He won't.
Well, he has to, doesn't he? Because his businesses are not doing very well.
Because of the terrorists marking his cars.
Terrorists?
Yeah, of course they're terrorists. What do you think they are?
No, of course they're not terrorists.
They're terrorists. It should be done under domestic terrorists, and they're going to get 20 years a pop.
How is it terrorism?
Well, what is it?
Vandalism.
It's not vandalism. There's vandalism. This is...
How does that terrorise the community?
Well, it's not me buying a Tesla.
Yeah, but
I wasn't planning to, by the way.
I mean, that's not on any definition of terrorism. If you look at the definition of terrorism,
I will bet
they're going to call it terrorism.
I will bet you lunch of a place of my choosing, not yours. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. We'll go somewhere nice. All right. Don't invite Timmy because there'll be knives and forks.
Oh yeah,
I don't want that.
He can't
right.
go.
I will bet you lunch that the people who've been caught on Tesla's brilliant security system with like 250,000 cameras everywhere, right, will be done on domestic terrorism.
No, I'm sure they will be. But
but that's my point.
Yeah, but they're not. But it isn't terrorism.
Well, it's not good. It's stupid.
It's of course it's stupid, but it's not terrorism.
Well, what is it? It's not just vandalism. It's politically
the definition
motivated.
of terrorism is quite specific, but it isn't just messing up a Tesla.
There are I'm serious, there's other ramifications from this. It's like, oh God, if I buy a Tesla, I'm going to get attacked. I'm not buying a Tesla because I'm not changing my car.
Well, I mean, many people would just, embarrass you into not buying a Tesla.
Why? What's wrong with it? Why do you hate it? It's nice. 5 minutes ago, he's saving the world. We're all going green. Oh, it's marvellous, an electric car. 2 minutes later, oh no, he's a fascist. You can't have an electric car. This is
not his electric car. You can have anybody else's electric car.
Oh man, I have this idea. Do you really think he's like his Nazi? Do you?
I really think that he is him himself. Yeah, I think he's a deeply unpleasant human being, and I think that he's got really dodgy right-wing leanings, which has been evidenced by the fact that he got himself involved.
I get the word evidence. Just go.
Yeah,
evidence.
No, evidenced by the fact that he got involved with the AfD and is trying to put right-wing parties in all across Europe.
Yeah.
So what do you think? And his family were all part of the Nazi party in South Africa.
But
so I think there's a fair amount of...
You haven't got a few odd
I think there's a
Balls and
fair amount of
Hosken-
evidence to show
Hosken
where
family there.
to show
Few
where.
of us haven't led Nazi parties across Africa. Come on.
I know. Well, there you
Find
go.
anybody in this building.
Anybody who says that that was a Roman salute has not looked
Oh, hang
closely
on.
at
No,
his past.
hang on. All right, I won't argue about the past because you're I'm not allowed to say brain box anymore. You're very clever, right? You will have researched this. But the salute, you look at any of these political people, they've all got their arms stuck out. You can always take that out of context.
Not when you watch it on video, you can't.
Okay, we leave it there.
Okay, if he didn't do it, you do exactly what he did.
I'm not doing it now.
Well, there you go.
Why
That
would I do
proves
it
the
now?
point.
Because there's only you and me in the room. Why would I be
there's
pointing?
a television camera.
There's a
so
what?
there are cameras all around this
I
room.
understand that.
If you think that what he did was just an innocent Roman salute, do it and do it exactly how he did it.
I'll do the Frankie
now.
Howard up Pompey.
Do it
salute.
now.
No, I'm not doing it.
See, proves my point.
No,
I'm
it
gonna
doesn't
yes,
prove
it does.
your point.
Of course it does. Because if it was an innocent Roman salute and he was just going, "I love you," you would do it. But you
It's completely out
suspect
of
it wasn't that.
But completely out of context. I'm going to start saluting anybody if two people having a chat in the studio. That'd be
But that
bonkers.
proves my point. If it was just a little, "Oh, I love you,"
Yeah.
then you would do it. You go, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it." But you won't do
because,
it
No, because
you know
you'd whisk me down to the register office, and you know it. If I said that,
You
say
know-
I've got a million witnesses
You
who said you
know-
loved me.
that it was at
Yeah.
the very least just incredibly dodgy. Otherwise, you would have.
Any of those
explained
raising
it.
your hands as dodgy, but they all done it. Barack Obama.
No, he not like that. We'll show you the video of it, and
Oh,
then
please
you,
don't,
and
it's
then
like-
if it isn't that,
Yeah.
you do it.
I'm not doing it.
There you go. Proves my point.
I'm
Taking a
having lunch
break.
with you now.
Back
That's
in a
it.
sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and with me is Russ Kane in the studio, and we're going through Thursday's papers.
We're going, yeah, it's
Thursday's
spooky.
papers.
It's spooky. It's like we are, Mystic Meg.
It's like we're in, well, we are.
Unbelievable.
We're Septic Peg, is it?
Oh, something or other, yes.
There's a text here saying, "I'm liking Russ. He gives as good as he gets. Lol." And that's
Oh,
from Rachel.
bless. Oh, thank you, Rachel.
We've
That's
been
very
arguing for
kind.
years, Rachel.
Oh, yeah, it's nothing
it's
new.
nothing new.
Just sit at a dinner table.
It's nothing new. We've always done it. Now, the Telegraph, again,
Yep.
there's the Trump there. PM's law chief makes veiled dig at boss over attack on judges. The
Yes.
Attorney General has attacked politicians who publicly criticised judges.
Yep.
Weeks after Sir Keir Starmer did so on the floor of the Commons. We should be allowed to politically criticise judges. I mean, shouldn't we? If they get it wrong, if we think they've
you
got
should
it
be
wrong.
allowed. I kind of think you should be allowed to comment on anything. If somebody's done something glaringly
Yeah, that we don't
mad
agree with.
or
Yeah.
wrong, or to be more accurate, if they've misinterpreted the law or given sentences that are ludicrous.
Yeah, that we don't agree
In
with.
other words, ludicrously harsh or ludicrously lenient.
Yeah.
Then you've got to. Then you should be able to say, "Hey, excuse me, what's going
They're
on here?"
public servants at the end of the day.
Everybody forgets
Yeah.
that all these people work for
public
you,
servants.
work for me,
Yeah.
work for all your listeners.
Yeah.
That's what everyone forgets. We don't work for them.
Yeah. It's supposed to be that we give money
Yeah.
and then they
So-
get paid from
so
that money to
to do
work
a
for
good
us.
job.
Yeah. And so if they don't,
We'd
we
like
have
our
every
money
right.
back,
Yeah.
please. All
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. All of it.
Absolutely.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
I'm just looking at, going back to Trump for a sec, reciprocal tariffs, and I'm looking at this thing. Holy moly. Tariffs charged to the USA by China, 67%. USA, I can't read the rest of it because of my eyesight, reciprocal, 34%.
Yeah, but I need to know that's not a full. He's not just saying tariffs. He's also saying a block on trade. So there will be
Vietnam, didn't they do enough damage to Vietnam? Why is Vietnam number 3 in your
because
pop,
China
in your
is
pop
doing
charts?
a lot of work, a lot of exports through
Oh, I see what you're saying.
through
Right.
Vietnam.
In Taiwan, Japan, okay, in India,
Yeah.
South Korea, right, okay. Switzerland. Well, Toblerone's going to go up to about £8.
I know,
Oh,
31%.
that's no good. Indonesia, not a clue. Don't know. Cambo, God
But
knows.
this will be a mixture of deficit, tariff, blocks to trade. He kept talking about these blockages to trade.
Yeah.
For example, the fact that Britain won't buy this chicken that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So he would see that as a financial block on trade because we won't accept.
Not because it's rubbish chicken and we don't want it,
exactly.
because it's horrible.
Yeah, exactly. And he said the same about Australia. They don't want the American beef, but they sell a lot of Australian beef into America. And he's going, well, that's a block on trade.
I see.
But it is also because perhaps the beef from America isn't as good quality, and they're,
It tastes good.
does it?
Well, you have steak in the States. Fantastic.
Yeah. Well,
It's good.
there you go.
Well, you know, but it's not chlorinated.
No.
I can't get that out of my mind because I hate the smell of chlorine.
I know.
It's like a school swimming pool.
I know,
It's
but
ghastly.
he talks a lot about the fact we don't buy chicken from America.
We've got our own chickens. We've got, how many chickens do you need for God's sake? We've got chickens. I think, coming back to this point, which is front page of tomorrow's Daily Telegraph, you should be able to say, look, I read this in the paper. You should be able to stand up in the comments and say, I saw this, I don't understand it, and have a look at it, because some of these sentences
Oh, the
are
judges.
just
Yeah.
absolutely mad.
No, I agree. I absolutely agree. What about this story here at the bottom? Amazon has made a last-minute bid for TikTok.
Yeah, I saw that.
This is just the American arm of TikTok, I believe. Jeff Bezos said that he wants to buy it, but I think TikTok have rejected it.
Yeah.
And there's always a question as well about freedom of speech and freedom of expression and things like that. And a lot of people who use TikTok are very worried that if Amazon buys it, if Bezos buys it, it'll become something else. That it will,
Like what? Toxic?
Toxic or to not.
Toxic, very good. You
Yeah.
can call it that.
Yeah.
Toxic.
Toxic.
You see,
Or
I'll get
it will
that,
be,
not
or
trademark
they
that.
won't accept people being, anti-Republican, or they'll adjust it.
I was thinking of you. I was going through, when I'm sitting outside having a delicious hot chocolate, I came across this picture of not Mrs. Bezos, it's his girlfriend,
Yeah.
whose name I can never remember because I don't care.
Yeah.
I think her name's Lauren something or other.
Oh, yeah, you're right,
And
it
she's got a coffee cup, right?
Yeah.
Which she's walking on, smiling like that. She's walking along. She's got a coffee
wind
cup.
tunnel.
She was part of the F1 wind tunnel for McLaren, I think. She got stuck in there, unfortunately. Anywho, how much do you think her stupid coffee cup is? Like you go to any, I'm not going to name any chain, and you get a coffee cup, right? And you walk along. How much do you think she paid for it?
Well, are these ones that have got a lid on them, the
Well, yes,
baby cup?
kind of
That-
thing.
well, mine's probably about £6, £7.
£6. Close. She's got a Balenciaga coffee cup. You ready?
Go.
Thank God you're sitting down. £5,500. And you think,
What's wrong with
really?
you?
What? Have you not got a life? You need a Balenciaga coffee cup for £5,500.
I mean, and this honestly, this is
mental, isn't
yes,
it?
it is. This is when you see these billionaires with all the money in the world in their pockets, and what do they do with it? They buy a $5.5 coffee cup.
It's like, is that
It's
the
sick.
best?
It's a sickness.
You want to go, Mrs. Is this the best?
Is this
the
really
best you can do? Really?
Is this what you think money should? And there are people who, for $5.5, that is their yearly.
That would change.
Yeah, everything.
Well, I wasn't even. I tell you this, Petrie. I wasn't even going down the road of, oh, you know, she could give it to, you know, an animal shelter or whatever it could be. It doesn't really matter. It wasn't even that. It's like, what kind of person are you that thinks, yeah, I'm going to get a $5.5
It's
coffee cup?
really
It's kind
sick,
of
isn't it?
obscene.
Yeah, it is
I
obscene.
like nice things. I've got no problem with lovely things. Don't judge me on my clothes tonight. But that's just mad. It's just rubbish, isn't
could
it?
you do that? I mean,
No,
even
I
if
couldn't
I
do
was
it.
a millionaire,
No,
I
could not do
couldn't
it.
No.
I couldn't do it.
But you would buy a really beautiful flash old car, wouldn't you?
No, I take out the word flash.
Okay.
I might buy myself one really lovely. What if I was Jeff Bezos?
Yeah.
Oh,
Would you buy
I'd buy my
lots
own
of cars?
island, disappear off the face of the earth.
Yeah, me too. Actually.
I would just like people. Not a fan.
No.
I would just do that. But
But you wouldn't buy a $5.5.
No, I was
coffee
like,
cup.
what matters? I think there's certain levels you have. It's not even. I don't even think it's morals. It's sort of built into our DNA. It's like there's rich, then there's rich that you can't even begin to imagine, unimaginable wealth, and you still think, no, I wouldn't do it. I really wouldn't do it.
No, I absolutely wouldn't do it. I couldn't either. That's ridiculous.
You can only have. It's all stuff, and you can only have.
It's
so
only
much
a
stuff.
cup,
It's just,
right?
It's a cup.
It's just a
What does it
cup.
do? You put your coffee in it. Right? Does
Yeah,
it
but
taste any
what you're
better?
doing with that cup is saying, "Look at me, I'm really rich."
You're saying, I've got the.
Yeah.
Actually, what you're saying is two things in her case. One, look who I'm hanging out with, and
Yeah.
you're not. Two, look at my cup because you can't afford
You
it.
can't afford it, and it's just nastiness, isn't
It's
it?
like-
It's just.
What the hell's that
Otherwise,
all
you just
about?
drink out of any old cup.
Who cares? It's a cup.
Yeah.
You know, it's a cup. I understand if you want to have like, you
This
know,
is
this
is solid diamond.
I love it. Is I can see that. I love Timmy on your cups. Obviously, Timmy is my hero.
Yeah.
I get that.
On
that
all
might
of,
cost
in
you
fact, I've got
£3.50.
wallpaper with that.
I know
on it.
that. You've got pillowcases with his face on it.
Do you know what?
Make
He would
myself
love
ill.
that. He would absolutely
He would
love
adore
that.
it.
Yeah, he really would.
He would
Just before we
adore that.
move on.
Oh, we still back on that one?
Are we
Okay.
are we on the Guardian now?
No.
Oh no.
Yes,
let's
we're on
go
the
to the
Guardian.
Guardian. Just before we move to the break, Val Kilmer.
Oh yeah, Val Kilmer. I'm going to say
What? A
Tombstone?
65.
65, right? 65. Life was horrible. Not the easiest of people. I
No.
was with my film producer buddy today who's worked with him. Not the easiest of guys. But put that to one side. Tombstone, fabulous film. Heat, fabulous film. Top Gun, thank you very much, love it. As the Doors, did you see him as Jim Morrison?
No, but I can
Oh my
imagine
God,
that was
it
brilliant.
was sensational. And of course, Batman. Okay, put that to one side. Maybe some people liked it. It was all right. But him as Jim Morrison was sensational.
I mean, what
The
a
Doors.
sad. I mean, because he hasn't been well. He hasn't
he's
been
been
in a
very, very
relationship
ill.
for 20 years, apparently. And he's been very poorly. I
Very
think
ill.
it was cancer.
Yep.
But he died of, it was throat cancer, but he died of pneumonia at 65.
Oof.
And it, again, it's just these icons, and so young.
Well, here's the thing, and it's a really salutary lesson to us all. I'm doing maybe 3 funerals a week, okay?
Yeah, that must
All right,
really...
okay? If it's someone who's reached their 90s, you say, well,
Yeah.
in England you say,
Fair
well, it's a
enough.
fair innings.
Yeah.
90s. The majority I do are younger than me, the majority. And it's like, whoa, that's... The majority are younger than I am.
What sort of 80-year-olds?
You ever thought of wearing green?
I saw
said
you
it.
then wanting to throw your pen at me. I
was
saw
so
that go
close.
through your
I
mind.
was so close. No, but you know what it is?
No, I
It's
know,
like,
but
it's
that's awful.
So 65, let's not kid ourselves, that's nothing, right? But he was, I loved his films.
I thought he was brilliant. I thought
really
he was a
liked him a
beautiful
lot.
man as well.
Oh
when
my
he was
God,
younger.
when he was younger,
He was stunning.
we were talking today at lunch. He was in that comedy. What's it called? It wasn't I Spy. It was about spies. It was like, you remember the airplane movies?
Yeah.
I loved all that kind
Yeah,
of
me
broad
too.
comedy and police Academy and all that nonsense back in the day, right? And he was in a spy thing, and crazy handsome. He's ludicrously good looking, charismatic, telegenic, all the rest of it. And he's funny.
Yeah. I mean, it's really sad.
It is, yeah.
Another one gone far too soon.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break, and Russ Kane and I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here, and Russ Kane is with me in the studio going through Thursday's newspapers. Let's pick up with The Guardian. And again, Trump with the tariffs taking up most of the paper. But then right at the bottom, Netanyahu says Israel will divide up Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel is seizing territory and intends to divide up the Gaza Strip by building a new security corridor amid a major expansion of aerial and ground operations. What do you make of this?
Well, with the greatest of respect, I will never discuss an article in The Guardian about Israel, point blank. Okay. I just won't.
All right.
I just really won't. Their history on it has been
But you think that
nothing.
They're biased?
Their history, The Guardian, in their reporting, has. I can't even go there. That's
okay.
how strongly
All right, well,
I
then
feel
we
about
won't.
it. Bless you for
we
that.
won't.
I appreciate that.
No,
Thank
that's fair
you.
enough.
Thank you.
The Financial Times.
Yes, this was, apart from the fact it's in like Helvetica 1 point, which is like, I'm like,
tiniest,
so
isn't it?
small.
It is so small, can't read it.
Tiny. Tiny thing.
So Trump is looking like he's going to sell his 2.3 billion stake in Truth Social after...
Did you ever look at that?
No.
I've never seen. I wouldn't even know how to find it. No. I just wondered if you have, because you know you.
No, I haven't bothered. Not my thing really. So that's that. UK plan for joint European fund to help finance continent's rearmament. This is interesting because
where are we going with this?
Yeah, because the EU has this massive fund. I think it's 400 or 500 billion, can't remember, a huge amount of money,
a lot.
to rearm Europe. Right. And at the moment the UK is not part of that fund because we're not in the EU anymore.
Oh my God, of course.
So if we want a slice of that pie, then the UK needs to join up with the EU so that we can start making weapons
it's not
and selling them.
Enough, is it really?
I know.
It's not quite embarrassing enough. Hello, do you remember us? Yeah, you want to... Yeah. About that. I just wondered if we could possibly come back. Any kind of, chance?
Any chance we can have a little bit of that pie?
Little bit. Look, you're not going to eat all that pie.
Not all by yourself, yeah.
And but I'm willing to help you eat that pie.
I think we have a very good chance of getting our hands on some of this money.
Yeah, how come?
Because we are one of only 2 nuclear powers in Europe. France is the other. Yeah, France is the other one. Yeah. And if they want, if America does back off from protecting us through NATO,
well, they will.
Then Germany has already said that they want France and Britain to offer an umbrella of nuclear protection across Europe, so from Russia.
God.
So I think there's a very good chance that we will get part of this fund, and we will make money from it with British arms companies, arms manufacturers, simply because we have that nuclear
Do you
protection.
think if France detonated a nuclear thing instead of a mushroom cloud, it's a huge garlic cloud?
Probably.
It would just be the shape of a big garlic.
And yeah, or
That'll
they
be
just,
it.
instead of throwing missiles,
Yeah, they
French
just
bread.
throw baguette.
Yeah.
If you
Actually,
leave-
I'd like that.
If you here's
Yeah.
the thing: the only way that would work is if the baguettes were stale. You haven't thought this through.
Yeah,
If
if
they
they're
throw
stale,
nice
they're
fresh
rough.
ones, they're going to bounce off you. Stale baguette straight in the head. It's going to hurt.
That's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt.
That
Let's
is
be
going to
honest
hurt.
about it.
So maybe that's what they're planning.
That's. I would love to read the other things. There's one thing. I'm going to struggle to read it. God, this is like an eye test, isn't it? Rich this is in the FT. It is so small. Rich urge to fly less so the poor can holiday in Spain. I'm not quite understanding that at all. It then goes, wealthy people should cut. I'm struggling.
Cut down flying
Cut down-
to ensure
thank you.
that poorer families can take
God only knows. One sunny
one sunny holiday abroad a year.
Enna Pinchback, Chief Executive. This is just rubbish. I'm sorry. It's just
I don't even understand what that means.
I don't understand the
suppose 'cause
article.
if the rich are flying with their private jet, and maybe they're talking
No,
about
they're not.
green
Everyone's
trade
going to
or
like
something.
EasyJet or Ryanair or something if you're going to Spain.
Yeah, I know somebody who's worth 88 million,
Right.
right? And he and his family fly EasyJet.
That's why he's got 88 million.
That's why he's
quid.
got 88 million.
Yeah.
That's
That's
88
how you-
million. And I did say to him
Wow.
one time, I said, why do you do that? And he went, why would I pay
would I
more
not?
on a
Why would-
flight when I can go there for 40 quid a head?
Yeah.
I'm like,
For an hour,
Because
2
you've got-
hours, who cares?
88 million.
But there is a thing, though. You
I
see
had
that-
somebody carry me on a chair.
Well, you would. They'd pick you up in your home on a sedan chair.
Yeah, exactly.
There'd be petals, rose petals and palm
Absolutely.
fronds
Yeah.
the whole way.
The whole way.
Obviously, goes
I
without
mean, I'm not
saying.
going to go EasyJet.
Well, if I had 88 million, I would take a private plane. The hell with it.
Even if it was only an hour, yeah. Of course you would. That gets rid of other people.
As I said, people, not a fan. That's the greatest. Have you ever been in a private jet? You must have. Knowing you.
No, I haven't. But I remember hearing, oh gosh, why has his name suddenly leapt out of my head? I'll come back after the break with it. But Ricky Gervais, there you go.
Ricky Gervais,
Ricky Gervais. And people were saying to him, why do you fly private? You know, you can get first class on a jet and everything. And he said, yeah, but it's because of, terrorism and bombs and that. And he said, I know on my private jet, I'm the only passenger. I know I haven't taken a bomb on board. And he said, that's why he likes to go private. He said, because I don't know about the other people. So,
have you seen pictures of his home? He's been very nice. Because I don't begrudge him a thing. And I think he's brilliant. I just do.
I think he's brilliant. And also, he's a big advocate of paying exactly what he owes in
Yes,
tax.
he does, and he's huge with animal charities, so I love him for that.
I love him
for obvious reasons. But he's showing, as the house is being done, the house is the size of, Westfield shopping centre. It's fantastic.
In Hampstead, isn't it?
It's, I guess so, and it's vast. But I love the fact, here I am. Yeah, I've done really well. And
This
here's
is
my
what
house.
I've got. Yeah.
This is what I got. I think that's pretty cool.
I love it.
Because he's come from nothing.
He also said that if he was on a jet that crashed, if he was on a normal plane when it crashed, he said no one else would be mentioned. It would just be Ricky Gervais died in that plane crash.
Ricky Gervais died on stage.
I love him. I love him. I won't hear a word against
sensational.
him. Right, just before we take a break, it's time to find out how you could be in with a chance of winning Oasis tickets at Wembley this summer. Absolutely. Tickets you can't buy, you can win. And Mike Graham has the details.
How do you fancy winning tickets to the hottest gig of the century? Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to bag yourself a pair of tickets to Oasis at Wembley this summer. Plus, we're giving away a whopping 10 grand and putting you up for the weekend in a London hotel. All you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 and you're in the draw. Alternatively, you can enter by post. Once again, all you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 or you can enter by post. Good luck.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. Enter by text for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on the 7th of April 2025. Or post your name and number to Oasis Competition, PO Box 3190. Colchester CO2 8GP to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of April 2025. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion.
So there you go. That's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to win that, and you're going to want to win that money as well. So make sure you enter, because the time is running out. So you need to enter very, very quickly if you're going to. Quick break. Russ and I'll be back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Wicker. We're talking about my garden furniture, which isn't wicker. You never guess how much it cost.
Oh, I would. No, I really would guess. I'd know it. I got dragged round the sofa place not that long ago.
Right, Ross Kane is with me in the studio. We're going through Thursday's newspapers. The Daily Mail. Brexit Britain is hit with 10% export tariffs, but EU hammered with 20% levy. This is being seen as a Brexit bonus. And people are hoping that we can get him down from that 10% as well. So that's another Donald Trump story.
Here's a nice little bit of writing. In a bombshell, yet often rambling announcement.
Yeah.
Bombshell, but rambling.
A rambling bombshell.
A rambling, I don't even know what that is. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. So that's the Daily Mail.
That's
the
whole
Sun.
front page, isn't it?
Sun, it is the whole page. The Sun front page. The Grand National, is that this weekend?
I guess it must be. Although, good for the Sun, I have to say, Val Kilmer, 1959 to 2025.
Really?
He had a horrible end. You wouldn't wish that on anybody.
No, you really wouldn't.
You really wouldn't.
Hamza henchman still a risk. 7-7 Mr. Big back on UK streets, caged in the US. Now he'll walk free from a secure unit. This is the mastermind linked to the 7-7 attacks on Britain is set to walk free, despite cops saying he remains a risk.
So
Haroon
can we ask why?
I don't know why. That is ridiculous, isn't it?
This is the 7-7 which all of us who, I know this isn't London, so it was just horrific.
Horrendous day, wasn't it?
Here's the supposed mastermind, and he's wandering around. How does that work?
I don't know. The ex-Abu Hamza accomplice jailed in the US will leave a secure unit for Yorkshire, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Phillips said he could still be a real danger. But then why
I
is
thought
he
you said
walking free?
Prince Philip. I thought that's a bit weird.
No.
Chris Philip.
Yeah.
He could be. I don't know. You see, this is. I don't know. I don't know. I've lost so much faith, Petrie.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
like
We all have.
He could be a perfectly nice guy going off to run a shop, or he could be a raving, screaming maniac.
Well, he's obviously a raving, screaming maniac, and we're not safe if he's not locked up.
Precisely. There you
Simple as
go.
that. It's not difficult, really.
I thought so.
The Mirror,
Yeah. Oh,
Trading
Grand
Blows.
National again. Big
Grand
deal.
National
Yeah,
again.
Yeah.
At Aintree. All the
Trade-
silks, all the tips, all the form. It must be this weekend. Must be.
Got to be all the silks.
Yeah. Do you ever bet on the GGs?
No. Oh yes, I do. There's a friend, somebody I don't really know that well, and if certain horses are running, she sends me a little message. Because one's called The Gatekeeper, which was my
Which
novel.
is your novel.
And another called, it's weird because we used to call my auntie this, Killer Kane.
No.
Killer Kane, yeah. We used to call my auntie that, my Auntie Sylvie. So, if Killer Kane or The Gatekeeper are running, I always have a little flutter on it.
Do you?
Yeah.
What, 25p each way or something like that?
And when I say little, I didn't mean minuscule. I mean no.
Yeah, that's the best way to bet. It's just with pennies, because then it doesn't really matter if you lose it.
Yeah, but
the
then
only
if
time I've ever
if it wins, you bang your head against the wall and go, but I put 25p on it.
I know, but that's the point,
Like a
isn't it?
fiver
It's
or
only
something.
for
I
the
put like a fiver
it's
on
only
it.
for the fun. The only time I won, because I was going out with a boy at school called Troy, and it was when Troy won the national, and I put like £2 on it or something.
Wasn't he in Midsummer Murders? That was Troy.
Was it?
Yeah.
Not
It was his
my
psychic.
old schoolboy
Well, it could have been. It could have been based on him.
schoolboy boyfriend. Troy Smith. Wonder where he is now.
Probably listening to the show going, whatever happened to that fabulous girl I was dating?
Well, he'd know it was me, wouldn't he, if he's watching the show?
Well, yeah,
But
maybe.
Troy Smith, where are you?
Well, here's a headline from the Daily Star. This is fantastic. Troy Smith, phone the show.
Yeah.
Let's
phone the
know,
show.
let's know what's going on after you left
0344499
Midsummer Murders.
1000. And
Inspector
just
Barnaby.
to check you are Troy Smith, I'll ask you the name of your best friend, who I still remember as well.
What's the moon ever done for us?
What?
This is one of the little side headlines on the Daily Star, right? And it goes like this. What's the moon ever done for us? I don't know how drunk you have to be to write that.
Well, it's because there's some concern that the comet that is heading our way will avoid Earth and hit the moon. And I suspect they're probably saying, well, so what? It's
Well,
quite
just so
important.
everything.
Yeah, it's quite. If we don't have the moon gets knocked out, we're all dead.
It's not going to go well.
No, it's not going to go well.
And a nice thing on the sun, farewell Iceman Batman.
Yeah,
Okay.
nice.
And I'm not going to do the thing about
Giant vermin terror. This is rats as big as dogs. Rats gorging on kebabs in piles of rubbish are growing as big as dogs.
Of course they are.
But they are showing small dogs. They're showing Yorkshire Terriers
Yeah, with a rat.
with a rat.
So what they've done here is they've recreated the lineup of the usual suspects, yeah,
Yeah.
with everybody in it. And they've just... What, you don't think this is to scale, do you?
I think they think it is.
Some days I really worry. No, they've just got pictures. They've got a King Charles Spaniel, God only knows, don't know.
It's a furry
rat
chihuahua.
and a little whatever the hell that is.
It's a jackawawa, I think, that one, the first one.
what?
A jackawawa.
You're just making this up.
No, I'm not making it up. That is a breed.
Jackawawa.
A jackawawa.
But it's got a
It's
picture.
a chihuahua and a Jack Russell combined, and they're called jackawawas.
Of course.
What a great name for a dog.
Jackawawa.
Jackawawa.
Why didn't I think of that myself? Anyway, to back this up, there's a fabulous picture of some bloke holding up a rat, which is not the size of a dog.
No, it's
It
not.
is oddly enough the size of a rat.
Of a rat.
I wouldn't want that job. I do
But
not want that job.
I do not. I would not want to be in Birmingham right now.
Oh,
though,
God,
bless
no.
them. I mean, those poor people suffering with all that
Horrible.
horror.
Have you seen the pictures of, because one side's Labour. I don't quite understand it. One side, they're different.
I think
councils
they're
or
different
something?
councils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the same
one side is
street,
clean and tidy.
and pristine, and the other looks like Well, I can't say.
Well, it looks
It's
like
disgusting.
Leicester Square did in the 70s.
Oh my God! Yeah.
But those poor, and I feel so sad for the people of Birmingham because, you know, they've still got to pay their council tax.
Well, I
They're still
wouldn't.
paying that.
The
I
hell
wouldn't
with that.
either.
I'd say,
yeah.
you sort this out, matey.
Yeah.
I'm not paying my tax.
Yeah, I agree with you, but a lot of people
ridiculous.
pay it, and of course they continue to pay it because
What's it all
otherwise they'll be
about?
taken to court.
I've lost the plot with that.
Because the council were trying to. The council's basically, although it's not allowed to be, but it is bankrupt because it didn't pay equal pay for many years to men and women in working for the council in various services. And of course they've been told they've got to pay it, quite rightly so.
And retrospectively?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, wow, how far back?
Absolutely.
Like forever?
It's a lot of money. I think it's nearly a bill, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and rightly so, that they should do that. But of course, the people of Birmingham are picking up the pieces of that because they're now trying to cancel contracts or reduce the pay on contracts, and that's what this strike, my understanding, is about with the bin, the wonderful bin people who, lest we forget, do the most extraordinary job for us.
They do a great job.
And I'm forever, every week, I'm so... it's like almost like the tooth fairy visiting for me. It's like, oh, you lovely people taking my rubbish away.
Blooming fantastic.
They are amazing.
I'm not just saying that
No,
because
I'm not.
it looks cool.
No.
It's like if
I
you
love
didn't
them.
have
I
bin
think they're
people,
great.
you know, people doing the streets and everything would be
It would be
revolting. So
awful.
bless them.
Yeah,
Bless
and I
them.
say good for them for holding out for more money. I really do. But then I do feel sorry for people who are having to live with that because it must be absolutely vile.
It's horrendous. Well, you know what London's like, even with regular pickup, especially in the summer.
In the West End,
rank.
it's shocking, isn't
It's
it?
absolutely blooming rank.
It can be
That's all
really
I
vile
can say on
in the
subject.
West End.
Horrible.
In
Yeah,
the,
you're
in the summer.
missing nothing.
No, I love bin day.
You're missing
Right,
nothing.
that's how exciting my life is. What else have you
Well, I
found,
found
Russ, in the
some-
last dying moments of this paper review?
I put the thing over. Yeah, this is very weird. I'm going to walk through it gently.
Okay.
I'm going to walk through this gently. Virginia Giuffre, who you know was the Jeffrey
The
Epstein,
accuser.
the accuser, and all of that,
Of Prince
got paid
Andrew.
a squillion quid or something like that.
She was trafficked. There was no
She
doubt
was
about
trafficked.
that. Whether she
Okay.
was trafficked to Andrew or not, I don't know.
But she was trafficked. The
Yeah.
whole thing's ghastly. Anyway, so you remember all over the papers, she posts this picture of her looking pretty beaten up. She was in a car crash, apparently, and she said she had 4 days to live.
I did say that was oddly specific.
It was
and
just 4
deeply
days.
suspicious.
Not 3 days, not 5 days. It is 4 days, apparently. Anywho, so this slipped through. This was in today's paper. Says her claim that she had 4 days to live was, ready for this? Made public in error. Of course it was, love. Her family said last night.
So it's not true.
Well, the police have said nobody was hurt.
I know.
This is the police said, yeah, there was an accident, but it wasn't like a terrible crash. Somebody bashed into a bus, and that was that. It wasn't like a terrible accident.
I did say, honestly, because it was on the front page of one of the papers the other day, and I went, nah, there's something something stinks about this.
Stinks to high heaven.
Stinks to high heaven, and I was right. There you go. I knew it. It was just like that 4 days. It's like, that's really oddly specific.
It's like, yeah, and the thing that really, I knew it. I always counted down 3, 2, 1. Everyone says, what is it? You see the Royals, another road accident. I'm going, oh, for God's sake, it's in Australia. It's a bus.
And if they wanted
It's a school bus. What do you think? Prince Charles, King Charles is driving a school bus to get rid of this. It's ridiculous.
No, it's absolutely
And it happened within minutes, you know. People are just so ready with weird stuff.
Right, Jill has just contacted me. She said, I love the Jackawawa. See? I wasn't
Oh,
making it
okay.
up.
Jill, right.
My poor dog is a chug.
A what?
A Chihuahua crossed with a pug.
Chug. Bless. Bless.
Thank you, Jill. Any other funny names of dog crosses?
Yes. Well, I was somewhere, I don't know what it was, and I said, what the heck's this? And it was an English sheepdog with a golden, with a golden doodle.
Yeah.
And it had some weird name like Sheepadoodle.
I know
It was
that.
like fabulous dog. I can't remember
But
what it
a
was.
Shih Tzu crossed with Maltese.
It is careful.
it's-
Multi-poo. Multi-poo.
Yeah.
They're cute though.
Yeah, they're
I've got to
multi-poo.
say, multi-poos are very cute.
They are cute.
Very, very cute.
Multi-poo.
How long we got?
We'll
We
ship
got time.
them.
Do you have a Le Creuset at home?
They weigh too much.
Here you go. Here's an interesting
I
thing.
used to have all Le Creuset.
Yeah, it weighs
I
a
got
ton,
strain injury on.
Yeah, because you get.
It was so heavy. No, I got rid
We've
of
got her
them.
name, Lauren Sanchez, 4,400 coffee cup, £400. Yeah, there you go. Le Creuset. This is quite interesting actually, because I got one, or maybe I got it from Lidl. Maybe it's just a little thing, who knows. Aspirational kitchen staple, blah, 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 blah. So their profits fell to 1.29 million, down 63%.
Wow.
And Sarah Vine is saying, well, yeah, I'm not surprised. I've got wrists. I can't pick them.
I can't pick them up. Honestly, I went through a stage of just buying Le Creuset because it was the thing. I had a blue set.
Oh, I like that colour.
Yeah, it's a lovely colour.
Yeah.
But I couldn't use it.
It's and cleaning it.
I mean, I could use it against an intruder because that would definitely sort them out. But yeah, no,
I mean, come back to you.
No,
it's
come anywhere.
Absolutely
ridiculous.
You'd be phoning me for the settlement service.
But no, everybody wants there's the new colours of Le Creuset they're bringing out now.
I like the traditional red, kind of reddy orange.
Oh yeah.
Reddy orange is a nice thing.
No, you've got to do some weightlifting before you can.
And the final thing, which is going to affect you, The Lady magazine. After 140 years, so I know that's your favourite periodical.
Yeah.
It's probably going to close.
Where am I going to get my nannies from?
Precisely.
Oh, shocking.
I know. I didn't want to break the news to you just like that, but it kind of popped out.
I needed a nanny for my dog, obviously.
I know, of course you do. Yeah. How is the dog?
He's all right, actually. He's going in for an operation soon.
Oh. Well,
but anyway, he'll be fine. Russ Kane.
Yes.
Thank you much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for
very
having me.
kind of you to come in.
Don't be silly. My absolute pleasure. Lovely.
Indeed. I loved that. It's great. So, coming up between you and me, actually, you, me and Laurie Laird, because we are going to be responding to these tariffs from Donald Trump that we heard. There's been some reaction from around the world. Mark Carney has been talking. He's the interim PM, if you like, and wannabe PM of Canada. So we do have some reaction and responses to this, and just to see if people are going to respond to this, and therefore this is a trigger to a global trade war or not. Is everybody going to stay calm? And in the meantime, I want to hear from you. Do you think that this indicates that our relationship with America is strong and healthy and brilliant? Or do you think, like Canada, we have to kind of go, do you know what? The good days are over. It's time for us to break up. Do we need to keep sucking up to Donald Trump or not? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And I'm still taking your calls through this hour, but I do want to have a look and see what's happening with these tariffs across the world. No justification for this, says the Irish Taoiseach, Prime Minister Michael Martin. He said there's no justification for US tariffs. We see no justification for this. More than 4.2 billion worth of goods and services are traded between the EU and the US daily. Disrupting this deeply integrated relationship benefits no one. Tariffs drive inflation, hurt people on both sides of the Atlantic and put jobs at risk. Manfred Weber, the president of the largest party in the European Parliament, to our American friends, today isn't Liberation Day. It's Resentment Day. Donald Trump's tariffs don't defend fair trade. They attack it out of fear and hurt both sides of the Atlantic. Europe stands united, ready to defend its interests and open to fair, firm talks. So in other words, the EU is not just going to lay down and take it. So I don't know if you were listening earlier on, but I've got some of what Donald Trump was saying. So let's just run through those quickly so that you get an idea of the tone and everything from Donald Trump earlier on. So first of all, we've got Donald Trump talking about this is the most devastating around the world, 25% on all foreign automobiles. Here he is.
Toyota sells 1 million foreign-made automobiles into the United States, and General Motors sells almost none. Ford sells very little. None of our companies are allowed to go into other countries. And I say that friend and foe, and in many cases the friend is worse than the foe in terms of trade. But such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who weren't doing their job. They let it happen, and they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe. That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles.
So there you go, 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles. When Donald Trump started to come to us, this is what he said about the United Kingdom.
United Kingdom, 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing.
This to me sounds a bit like the Eurovision Song Contest, doesn't it, a bit? Anyway, the European Union was next on his list.
European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You know, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half.
And then China was in his sights.
China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset?
So it all sounds very fair, doesn't it? It all sounds very, very fair. These are reciprocal tariffs. But are they? Because when he's talking about that 67%, he's not just talking about a reciprocal tariff. He's added in there things like, he was talking there about currency exchanges, currency manipulation, he would call it. He's also talking about bars to China importing. And he made a big deal earlier on talking about, you know, these countries, they won't buy our rice. They won't buy our rice. They sell us rice, but they won't buy our rice. And there is a reason for that, because they don't want cheap rice going into their country and therefore destroying the rice market in their country. And there's an exceptionally good book on American economics around the world, and it's called Why People Hate America. But it's about their economic behaviours around the world, where they do that. They go in and they take cheap rice and they keep flooding the country, let's say, with cheap rice until such point as the local market has collapsed, and then they start to put the price up of the rice that now that country can only import. And it's been I mean, look, this is what trading people do, right? That's what they do. If they've got a glut of something, like America quite often has a glut of corn or a glut of wheat, that's what they'll do with it. They'll try and get it into other countries cheaply. So it's not just the exactly reciprocal, and this is what I'm really confused about. But I would like to bring back Laurie Laird now, my favourite little American and economist. This term reciprocal, he kept saying reciprocal, but it isn't tariff for tariff, is it?
No, look, these things are so opaque. There is no transparency. He also mentioned, you mentioned that he talked about non-tariff barriers. He didn't specify what they were. He also talked about VAT, or consumption taxes. He seems to think that consumption taxes, which are a popular way to raise revenues in Europe, in the UK, that 20% VAT, he thinks is a penalty on U.S. goods selling here. It doesn't seem to understand that VAT is levied on things that are made here as well. So VAT is not disadvantaging goods that come from the U.S. This makes absolutely no sense. And because these reciprocal tariffs are so opaque, it makes it very difficult for a country who perhaps wants to get into Donald Trump's good books. How do they do it? Because you're not entirely sure what these reciprocal tariffs are made of. But reciprocal sounds good, doesn't it?
Reciprocal sounds good.
Selling it
exactly
to a U.S. audience.
And somebody, Lindsay, has said, I know your TDS. I think that's Trump delusion syndrome or something. Derangement. Now, I can dislike somebody without being deranged. Thank you very much, MAGA. I know your TDS inhibits you from listening when Trump speaks, but he has made it clear the tariffs are reciprocal to level out the playing field. Crikey, you've drunk the Kool-Aid. Because like you said, we don't know what this reciprocal tariff is made up of.
But how can you get mad at reciprocal? It sounds fair, right?
It sounds fair.
Equitable.
Yeah.
But that's Donald Trump saying it's reciprocal.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a like for like there. Look, there's probably a kernel of truth in what Trump says. The average tariff of a good going into Europe on a U.S. produced good is about 5%. It's about 3% going the other way. So there is a little bit of an imbalance there. However, it's hard to square that with the fact that the U.S. economy, until recently, was growing so much more quickly than any other advanced economy. The European Union is barely growing. The UK is barely growing, right? There's complete stagnation in these two economic regions. Yet the U.S. economy is growing by 2%, 2+% a year. So the fact that there is a bilateral goods trade deficit in the U.S. does not necessarily mean that the U.S. economy is in bad shape. In fact,
that's the point. That's the point,
It's
Laurie.
a weird metric.
It's such a weird metric, because he began this speech by saying that the U.S. had been raped, pillaged, all of these words,
really strong
ripped
language.
off. Yeah, awful language actually, and ripped off. Well, if that was the case, how have they made so much money? I mean, a trade deficit is not a bad thing to have. It just means that they're a bigger country selling to smaller countries who don't need as much stuff as the bigger country. It doesn't mean that they're sponsoring or supporting another country. It just means that they want to buy more goods than, and they've got more people.
Consumers have the means to buy some of these imported goods. It could be, it shows that consumer demand is still very strong. And as we said earlier, consumer demand makes up about 2/3 of the US economy. You want consumers to buy stuff, and sometimes they will buy things that come from other countries. That doesn't mean that the US is in a bad position. Look at some of the countries that have trade surpluses. China has a big trade surplus. The economy is in real trouble. There's a big real estate crisis. China is drowning in unpaid property debt. Germany, big trade surplus. The German economy has been in recession for the past 3 years. So these things do not equate. It is an odd metric. And one of the things that I marvel at is Donald Trump's economic team is pretty standard, pretty orthodox. You look at some of the people that he's chosen for defense and intelligence, intelligence roles, and go back to Signalgate, we can see that perhaps some of these people have been promoted above their degree of competence. That's not the case with the economic team. They're pretty standard economists there. The head of his Council of Economic Advisors was a couple of years ahead of me at university. This is a university that is not known for its right-wing leanings. Kevin Hassett, the man I'm talking of, is thought of as a very well-respected orthodox economist. I think a lot of people thought that this more orthodox economic team would kind of save Trump from himself, but it hasn't been the case. And in fact, Scott Bessent, who's the Treasury Secretary, spoke to CNN just a few moments ago and said, look, if you retaliate against us, we're going to ratchet up those tariffs. And then on the other hand, however, we had a top Republican lawmaker who's on the tax writing committee in the House of Representatives said, don't worry about it, guys. I think these tariffs will be reduced. Oh my gosh, how do you plan when you're having these mixed messages? It doesn't feel like anyone really understands what's going on here.
But does Donald Trump genuinely believe that people won't retaliate? I mean, he tried that with Canada, right? He tried that with Canada, and immediately he backed off because Canada said, you do this, you watch out, and we're coming for you, right? We're going to switch off the electricity or whatever we need to do. This is not going to go well for you. And immediately that Mark Carney said, our relationship as we've known it with America is over. Really strong words from Mark Carney, right?
Yeah, very strong words.
Really strong words. That is it. We're done. Trump was on the phone to him within an hour of that statement.
And praised him and actually said, Carney, I don't have any problems with Mark Carney. But Trump is doing something that none of us expected. In his first term, we thought that he viewed the stock market as a barometer of his performance. We thought it was almost like a popularity rating for him. He doesn't seem particularly concerned about the sell-off in the stock market that we've seen over the past month or so. And share prices look like we've got some after hours trading that's happening now. The biggest components of the S&P 500, which is a grouping of roughly the 500 biggest companies in the US, down a lot. Almost every stock that makes up that index is down in after hours trading. In Asia, you can't buy these U.S. stocks, but you can buy an index that is based on these stocks. The Dow Jones, another aggregate of the stock market, down almost 4%, S&P down almost 4%. So this looks like it could be a very big sell-off in shares. That used to sort of shock Donald Trump or save him from himself, sort of curbed his worst instincts. He doesn't seem to be all that concerned about
again in this speech. He said, look at the markets. They've all risen by 5.6% or whatever it was he said in his speech. Where is he getting that number from?
I don't know. I wondered the same thing. And he said again, this drives me crazy, that the inflation that America suffered in the last administration, which topped out at just over 9%, was the worst we've ever seen in history. That's just not true, Petrie. It's simply not true. Inflation was over 20% in the late 1940s. It was over 12% in the late 1980s. This is just not true. The other thing that he did, although this was a little bit more implicit, he's created this narrative without actually saying so, that somehow it's China or the offensive country over there that is paying these tariffs. This isn't the case. It is the company that imports whatever good that comes into the country. It's the company that pays that. So if you're a Ford Motor Company and you're importing some steel from China or anywhere else, Ford will pay that extra cost. In fact, there's a line so the government takes it almost a direct debit. So it's Ford, it's these U.S. companies that are paying these fees. So yes, there'll be more money coming into the Treasury, but it's being paid by U.S. companies. Now, what do those U.S. companies do? Historically, they have passed on some or all of those extra costs to consumers. So yeah, there'll be more money in the U.S. Treasury. There'll be more money in the coffers, but it's being paid for by us.
Yeah.
And when I say us there, I mean me as say I were buying things in the U.S.
Yeah. But, you know, a lot of people will be thinking, look, this somehow sounds that it's going to make sense, that people will be looking at two cars, one of them made in Germany and one of them made in the US, and the one that's made in the US is 25% cheaper, and they're going to get a tax break on buying a US car. I'll buy a US car. So to some point, it does make sense.
I guess, and let's see whether that tax break, he sort of talked a little bit about a tax break for people who buy U.S. cars, but that didn't seem all that well thought out.
No.
None of this seems all that well thought out. But what constitutes a U.S.-made car?
Yeah,
is it a car that final assembly was in Detroit, but the seats and the gear shift might have been put together in Ontario, in Canada, and then it crosses the border? About half of U.S. cars that are sold are imported. But a lot of the companies that are doing the importing are Ford and GM and Chrysler, which is owned by Stellantis. They're importing from their own factories in Canada and Mexico. So it's not all Mercedes coming in from Germany.
Yeah.
And so this is just, it's bizarre. And I'm glad you brought up the Irish Prime Minister, because he's been quite aggressive, and he wants to, he didn't say retaliation, but he's pretty unhappy about what's happening. Irish exports to the U.S. rose about 40% in 2024. A lot of that is a weight loss drug made in Cork, or outside of the city
Eli
of Cork,
Lilly.
by Eli Lilly, an American company. None of this is in any way joined up, and I marvel at the fact that some of these mainstream economists are going on the news and saying, yeah, this makes sense.
But, maybe it would encourage Eli Lilly to move its factory back to America. I mean, again, that it would be a positive turn of events for Donald Trump. Maybe that's what he's trying to do. He's already accused Ireland of stealing all of America's scientists. And then, maybe they'll all go back to the US.
Well, these drugs are pretty expensive. I mean, America has a very big problem with the price of prescription medicines. I mean, so many of them are out of the reach of so many families. If Eli Lilly packs up and decides to make this drug, say near Milwaukee, it's probably going to be a lot more expensive. There was a reason they set up in Ireland in the first place.
Yeah, quite. It's really fascinating to me about what Donald Trump says sounds sensible. It sounds reasonable. It does. It sounds like, well, okay, if I charge all these tariffs.
I'm not sure I'm with you there.
No, but to people who are not economists, right? Yeah, okay. To people who don't quite understand how intertwined the global trade situation is, that they will go, well, this makes sense. And again, there was a message earlier going, well, look, it's going to be great because they're going to stick it to the EU, and they're going to people are going to build factories in America, and all those jobs and all those skills and all those things are all going to be in America, and America's going to trade with itself, and we're going to start buying stuff from America that we don't want to buy. I mean, that's the point, is that I don't know who the end user is meant to be.
But what I don't understand, and I've been puzzled by this during both of Donald Trump's campaigns. Let's go back to the conversation we had an hour ago, 2 hours ago. The unemployment rate in the U.S. is extremely low. But somehow Americans seem to think that there's an economic catastrophe somewhere over there. So they have a job, and their neighbors all have jobs, and their family all has jobs. But they seem to, Donald Trump has convinced people that despite the fact they're doing okay, that somewhere over there are going to soup kitchens and you know, and making their own
desperately
shoes.
wanting a job in car manufacturing.
Yeah, exactly. And we saw this during the campaign when Trump, kind of hinted that Haitian migrants were eating family pets for dinner. People believed that somewhere in the country, Fluffy was being served up for dinner, even though they weren't witnessing it themselves, and even though it sounds fairly preposterous. So this is Donald Trump's political genius, is to convince people that despite the fact they may be in reasonable shape, that there's a catastrophe right around the corner. They just can't see it. There are things, and the thing that I'm fascinated by is there are metrics on which the U.S. does lag behind, things like healthcare outcomes. America pays almost 20% of GDP on health with outcomes that are no better than anywhere else, and in some ways a whole lot worse. There are things that are going very wrong. How many people in America in prisons? How many people reoffend? America lags in so many of these areas, but these don't seem to be things that incense people.
No, it's always money, though, isn't it? It always seems to come down to money. Kevin in Hull wonders if cars with very low mileage, like second-hand cars, would they also be tariffable?
Excellent question. My feeling would, and who knows with this administration, nothing is really, but an orthodox reading of this would be that a car that is already in the country will not be subject to tariffs. So a second-hand Porsche will not be subject to tariffs. But it's an interesting point because you can see that the resale value for second-hand imported cars will probably go up quite a bit.
Yeah, because if presumably any car that's imported would be subject to tariffs, whether it's brand new or not. Yeah.
And yes, any second-hand car that's being imported will be subject to tariffs. Anything that's on U.S. soil. But listen, cars that are on boats approaching U.S. ports, maybe they arrive tomorrow. This will be an immediate.
He said from midnight, didn't he? He said from midnight.
And believe that. The estimates of how much more expensive cars will be really run the gamut. But I've seen numbers between 3,000 and 12,000. I mean, this thing that most Americans need is about to become seriously more expensive.
Seriously more expensive.
All in the name of reducing inflation.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Laurie, stay where you are. We'll come back to you in just a moment. I've got to take a very quick break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, and a good morning to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. With me is economist and political commentator Laurie Laird. Laurie, before we go back to the implication of these tariffs individually, what is the world saying about this? Mark Carney has stood up to speak.
Mark Carney looked visibly angry. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, at least for a couple more weeks. There's an election 28th of April when he'll be electorally tested for the first time. Mark Carney, pretty well known here as an ex-governor of the Bank of England, ex-governor of the Bank of Canada. This is a guy who knows his economics pretty well. He did a very short statement and said he'll have more for us tomorrow after he meets with his cabinet. But my word, I mean, shaking with rage doesn't describe it. And he shouldn't be hugely surprised. This was coming down the pike. Let's see what he has to say tomorrow. Most of the reaction has not surprisingly been pretty negative. I saw the Prime Minister of Sweden advocated negotiation. Almost everybody else said, we are going to retaliate. A top MEP told us to expect something from the EU quite soon. Interestingly, Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, she's tried to position herself as almost a Trump whisperer, seems to have a good relationship with Elon Musk. She was very negative about this. And if anyone in Europe was going to come out and sort of try and find some middle ground here, I would have thought it would have been Giorgia Meloni. But no, she was pretty negative about this. Australia has been negative. It's hard to find any way to spin this in a positive way. Now, unless I've missed it, Petrie, I've not seen any official statement from the UK. You've seen a couple of things leak, a couple of anonymous briefings. I'm getting the sense that the UK feels pretty good that we're only at this 10% level, lower than
there's been comments coming out saying, "Oh, you see, that vindicates the way we've been treating."
Yeah, but nothing out of Downing Street with the name on it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right about that. Australia have said that they're going to be calm, haven't they? They've said they're going to be calm in the face of what's been going on. The Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, said it's the American people who will pay the biggest price for these unjustified tariffs.
That's probably true, Petrie. I've seen a couple of estimates that show that the average level of tariff on all goods imports for the U.S. will go from the current level of about 2% to over 22%. And again, overnight for some of this stuff. People are going to feel this. Now, the way that tariffs go into inflation, if a tariff's imposed and it stays at a certain level, that will feed into inflation. But remember, inflation's an acceleration, right? Prices have to keep rising to add to inflation. So if this is a one-off, it will feed into inflation for a period of time, but then those prices will stay at that elevated level. So inflation you'll get an uplift to inflation, but you won't get that constant acceleration, unless if we take the U.S. Treasury Secretary at his word. If you retaliate against us, we're going to hit you back again. If we see a ratcheting up of tariffs, then yes, that will continually go to feed into inflation. As we said earlier, the Federal Reserve, the central bank, with the economy slowing, what do? Do they try and stimulate growth, or do they try and stick to their mandate, which is to keep inflation down? A couple of economists have come out over the past hour or so before this announcement that the kind of risk of the U.S. going into a recession at some point soon was, 25, 30%. It varies from forecaster to forecaster. But I'm now seeing kind of 50% plus.
Wow. I mean,
when the U.S. goes into recession, the rest of the world tends to follow.
Where can this go, right? Because, we have a situation where Donald Trump is thrown out these reciprocal tariffs. And like we said, we haven't had any justification that these are reciprocal at all. We don't know what he means by that, because it's certainly not tariff on tariff, right? He's not matching an exact tariff from the other country. So it's not reciprocal in that term. It's by a measure that has been put together by Donald Trump and his team. So we don't know what measures were taken to come up with these outrageous levels of 88% from one country. I think that was Sri Lanka.
Laos.
Yeah,
Sri Lanka,
88% tariffs. Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah. So, but where can this go? So we get the EU, who then handpick. They're going to pick red states, Harley Davidson, bourbon, things like that, to hit America back. But Trump has said, well, if you hit me back, I'm just going to hit you for harder. Then what we end up at 100%, 200%, 500%.
Petrie, who knows?
I mean,
this is the thing. Who knows? Again, the difference between Trump 1 and Trump 2 is Trump 2 seems to be okay with doing things that are not in the country's economic interest. You know, he seemed to want to be popular to a greater extent in his first term than in his second term.
I mean, he has said, I'm not bothered about the cost of cars going up.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not bothered. I'm not bothered.
And there'll be some adjustments.
There'll be some adjustments.
So he has come off this, it's going to be perfect for everybody. He seems okay with this. And this is something that nobody counted on.
Yeah.
We all thought that when economically there was a squeeze, Donald Trump would back off. Look, Donald Trump can say offensive things, but he does like being popular. Different than Elon Musk. I don't think Elon Musk cares what people think of him. J.D. Vance, same way. But Trump does, to a certain extent, want to be liked. Remember in the campaign when Tim Walz, it was Kamala Harris's running mate, called him weird. You could see that really rankled with Trump. So I'm utterly shocked that he's willing to risk his popularity, because his popularity will be tied to the state of the economy. Remember, he ran on the cost of living. This is one topic that Kamala Harris couldn't handle.
Didn't he also say that if any president oversaw the drop in the stock market by 1,000 points, they should resign immediately?
That sounds vaguely familiar, Petrie.
And how much has the market? The markets have gone down, what, 2,000-3,000?
Most indices down about 4%, but it's 4% over the past month. It's a pretty steady fall. If we see what the futures markets are suggesting, this 4% fall at the open tomorrow, that'll sting. But for whatever reason, this doesn't seem to be his metric. And this is something that I'm surprised about. A lot of other people are surprised about. One thing that's happening that is helpful for him is bond yields are falling. I'm surprised about this. Usually because bonds pay a fixed coupon, when inflation rises, you need the coupon to be above the rate of inflation by a certain amount. Otherwise, you don't get much of a return for your money. So when those yields fall, it means that people do not think inflation is that much of a problem. This suggests that investors think that a recession is coming. The move in bond yields has been pretty big for a very short period of time. That will give Trump a break. It gives him something to boast about. Look, interest rates are coming down.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And of course, all of these things are long, we will only really see the true effects of this along the road, because immediately, although the tariffs will happen immediately, it won't attack.
I think we could see things quite quickly, because consumer spending is pretty elastic. People make their decisions based on, immediate things. Surveys of consumer confidence have fallen really dramatically over the months of February and March. I mean, some of the biggest falls we've seen in years. The other thing that's interesting is people's expectation of what inflation will be has risen quite dramatically, which again will be a cause for concern for the central bank. That will make them less likely to cut rates. But we're seeing, at least in survey stuff, now survey evidence is not the same as people going to the stores, but consumer confidence is falling a lot. Donald Trump now has a negative approval rating on his handling of the economy, and that was during the campaign something that he so outpolled Harris on. So we're seeing some, I think there's a cohort of Donald Trump supporters who will think his policy is great no matter what it is. But I think we're starting to see that people are becoming concerned. One of the problems was that variability of policy. You don't know what it's going to look like when you wake up in the morning. But this is something that they should be worried about.
Yeah, and look, it's when we start to see those retaliatory tariffs going on and what happens next that will really mark what's happening. Listen, Laurie, I'm just going to take a quick break, but I will be back with you in just a moment. But
you got it.
How about finding out how you could be in with a chance of winning Oasis tickets at Wembley this summer? Mike Graham has the details.
How'd you fancy winning tickets to the hottest gig of the century? Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to bag yourself a pair of tickets to Oasis at Wembley this summer. Plus, we're giving away a whopping 10 grand and putting you up for the weekend in a London hotel. All you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 and you're in the draw. Alternatively, you can enter by post. Once again, all you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 or you can enter by post. Good luck.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. Enter by text for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on the 7th of April 2025. Or post your name and number to Oasis Competition, PO Box 3190. Colchester CO2 8GP to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of April 2025. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion.
So there you go. Get on with it quickly because time is running out. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and with me is Laurie Laird, economist and US political commentator. Laurie, let's have a look, if we can, at the politics of this, because some people are questioning whether Donald Trump has the legal right to by himself, if you like, without going through Congress and without the Senate and without all those people that are supposed to make up the three tenets of the American democracy and politics. Can he just do this?
Such a good question. I thought you'd never ask, Petrie. In theory, he shouldn't be able to. Article 2 of the Constitution specifically says that all matters of tariffs, trade, are the responsibility of Congress, the legislature. What Trump has done is claimed emergency powers to impose these tariffs. Is that legal? It's hard to say that the U.S. is facing an economic emergency when unemployment rate is at a historical low. Most people have jobs. Doesn't look like an economic emergency to me.
But is it an emergency when he says it's an emergency? Because he's declaring that the trade deficits is a national emergency. He's invoked that law before, has he not?
And the feeling was that this is why, with those initial tariffs or initial threat of tariffs with Mexico and Canada, that's why he used the fentanyl and immigration, because that sounds like a much more urgent problem. It's easier to package that as an emergency than we have a bilateral goods trade deficit. But he definitely has used the word emergency to implement these tariffs that he announced today. Whether that will hold up in a court of law is a question. Now, I'm not aware of any big lawsuits pending here, but I'm sure there will be some going forward. Democrats in both houses of Congress are trying to, and I believe the Senate is debating these tariffs right now, and there's some Democrats who are trying to force a vote. They won't win that.
No.
But it'll be very interesting to see whether any Republicans are brave enough. Republicans say one thing, but not every Republican thinks this is a great idea. Can the Democrats pick up any Republican support will be interesting. The House wants to do the same next week.
The Republicans in the House must be frustrated by the fact that they're not having a say in any of them.
Anything.
They're just random, they're just surplus to requirement. They're not being spoken to, they're not being asked
Legislature has been completely defanged. When Donald Trump defunded the Agency for International Development, the arm of government that responsible for humanitarian aid and lots of other overseas aid, that was created by an act of Congress. It should be concluded by an act of Congress. The problem is that the judiciary moves quite slowly. So by the time the judiciary may say, wait a second, you can't do this, it's already been done. Like the planes of migrants that were sent to El Salvador.
And not just migrants either, legal Americans were sent there.
Absolutely.
But
the planes had already taken off.
Yeah, but what politically, it can be done. I mean, Donald Trump will say, well, if I say it's an emergency, and I'm the president, so you can't. I can hear Caroline Levitt saying it now, but who declares an emergency?
Well, it looks like the president does, and his party has. I mean, you used this term earlier, so I can do it now. The party's just bending over. And Democrats have not helped themselves. The Democrats have sort of rolled over as well. Hakeem Jeffries, who's the top Democrat in the House of Representatives, middle of last month, when all of this is going on, wrote a children's book and was on a book tour promoting it.
Yeah, it's not good, is it?
You gotta stand up. If you're a Democrat and you believe that Congress is being bypassed, stay there.
Yeah.
Right? The Democrats, they don't have any hard power in Congress, having minorities in both houses, but they certainly have a pulpit. They can certainly stand up and say, look, guys, you said you voted for an improvement in the cost of living. You're not seeing that. And it's remarkable that the Democrats seem to be playing a strategy of let Donald Trump blow himself out.
But it just seems to be...
He may not do that. And Republicans are too scared to say anything.
But it also seems that I know you and I have spoken about this before, that people have stopped fact-checking Donald Trump, that what he says is just taken as truth.
It's too difficult, Petrie. There are so many untruths in any given speech, and I think the bits of the media have tried their best, but there is so much information that comes out of this administration. Look, I mean, Donald Trump probably speaks to a camera for an hour and a half, most days. He does this new thing of every time he has a meeting, bringing those reporters into the Oval Office. That's a new thing, where he may speak for an hour or so. Then there's a press conference later in the day. You've got the White House press conference and dissecting his Truth Social account. There's just so much information that he puts into the public domain. It's really difficult to keep up. And some stories that I think are important aren't getting a whole lot of play. There are now 4 law firms that have agreed to work pro bono for this government to the tune of between 40 million with Paul Weiss, which is a very big law firm, up to 100 million for 2 others. This just came out today. Donald Trump was threatening to take any kind of federal business from them, threatening to go after, to penalize clients of these law firms. All had something to do, all had transgressed in a way that had something to do with him. Either a partner had worked on one of the impeachment cases or something along those lines. These law firms have now agreed to do pro bono work for the government. Presumably these are topics, these are areas at the government's discretion. Wow. So instead of saying, okay, we're going to stand up, they said, we're too afraid to lose our business. So it's not just Congress that's bending over. It's the business world.
Yeah, ruling by
the head
fear.
of JP. Yeah, the head of JP Morgan, a guy called Jamie Dimon, was extremely critical of Trump after January 6, 2021. He's now a big cheerleader. He's the head of Goldman Sachs.
Well, hang on, J.D. Vance was far from complimentary about Trump until he got a job there. Laurie, we've got to take a final break, but I will be back in just a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side.
Hello there, very good morning. So a little bit of breaking news here. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has said that they will be announcing their reciprocal tariffs. I don't know yet, but they will be responding to Donald Trump's tariffs at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So, oh, no, this morning. Sorry, this morning. I keep forgetting where I am. So there you go. Europe are prepared. They must have known it was coming. They're ready with a statement, and that will be delivered at 6 a.m. So you need to be listening to Mike Graham, who will be on air and responding to that. So make sure you listen to Mike Graham for Breakfast Show this morning. Laurie Laird is still with us, and while we're talking things, money and what's going on in the States, and I heard this rumour a few days ago, and I was really surprised when it popped up because I wasn't sure of my source. Wasn't 100% certain that my source was right, that Elon Musk is to step down as not head of Doge.
Yeah, Politico picked this up today, and it seemed pretty well sorted. Look, I largely trust Politico.
No, I trust them as well, but I'd heard it a few days ago from someone else, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to go public with that. I should have done.
Yeah, but then someone would have quoted you, and
yeah, then it would have all gone. Yeah, true.
But no, Politico's claims that 3 people close to the administration say that Musk will be stepping down or stepping aside, stepping somewhere, fairly soon. And my question is, I mean, how did they survive this long, right? 2 of the biggest egos on the planet. These guys are like 2 cats in a bag. This was never going to last that long, was it? But that bromance is going to continue because these 2 guys really need each other. I mean, they really need each other. Musk needs an into the administration because so many of his businesses either sell to the government or are regulated by the government. I mean, this is when I said earlier about there's so much information that comes out, we forget where to look. This conflict of interest that Musk works for a company, works for an organization that he both sells to and is regulated by. It's just the conflicts of interest. I mean, we could do an hour just on that. SpaceX, his rocket launching company, the biggest client is the U.S. government. It's NASA. Starlink, his internet company, regulated by his boss. You know,
and he wants
absolutely. So he needs that.
Yeah,
I mean,
but isn't it the case as well with the FAA that he now wants Starlink to do all of the what's it called?
Yeah, all of the satellite.
Yeah, all of the satellite coverage of flights and things like that. That he's now pitching. I saw that being talked about in the Senate.
And he had a hand in sacking the old head of the FAA and handpicking the successor. I mean, this is crazy stuff. On the other hand, Musk has a lot of money, and he's willing to put it toward causes that are close to Donald Trump's heart, like getting his acolytes, his disciples elected. There was an election yesterday in the state of Wisconsin.
I'm fascinated by that. I did watch that. Yeah.
Obsessed with this. This was for a judge to sit on the state Supreme Court. That Supreme Court is fairly finely balanced between liberals and conservatives. This election, right? Again, Wisconsin, not the biggest state, a judicial race. $100 million went into this race. 20% of that was funded by Musk to try and support a candidate more in line with Donald Trump's values. This is nuts, Petrie.
I know,
Musk
but what
has
was
threatened?
Yeah, but what was fascinating about that race is or that competition, if you like, is that he put in all the money and all the nasty adverts and everything that was there to try and get Brad Schimmel elected, and it didn't work. And the people of Wisconsin seem to have said, look, you can't. And Musk was in there offering $100 per vote and $2 million, $1 million checks. But my understanding, Laurie, and I'd like to pick your brains on this, is that in the state of Wisconsin, that level of election interference is illegal. And because it's at the state level, Musk could be prosecuted by the state of Wisconsin, and Donald Trump can't pardon him. Is that right?
If there is a state infraction,
there has been, yeah,
and he is convicted of such, no, Donald Trump can't help him in any way at all.
That's amazing.
The whole thing's amazing. But when this came up during the federal election, because remember he did this, I think it was in Pennsylvania, which we thought was going to be a key swing state. It turned out not to be. He did a similar thing. If you sign a petition supporting Donald Trump friendly causes. I'll give you $100, and then there's a lottery for $1 million. That was taken before a judge in Philadelphia. He was allowed to do it. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the ins and outs of that. Because to me, it feels like vote buying.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like the definition of vote buying. But you're right, state laws in Wisconsin are different. So there could be action to come on this. But Musk has threatened to fund candidates in primaries. So that's when the Republicans choose their own candidates to run. Anyone who may query Trump publicly, Musk has said, I'll fund a rival to you in the primaries. So these guys need each other.
But surely, I mean, just looking at that level of vote buying, that is not democratic. There must be something in the Constitution that says that that's not.
You can't pay people to vote.
Yeah.
I mean, they're developing economies or developing democracies in the third world where that sort of thing at least is covert.
Yeah.
This is Elon Musk on television saying, vote for me, here's $1 million. It's gobsmacking.
It's completely.
The fact that we're having this conversation is actually remarkable. And wherever you are on the political divide, it's the process that we need to question. You know, I'm not here right now to question Musk's, political ideas. The process. This looks to me like buying votes. It's incredible.
But if it was happening in another country, America, old America, anywhere, I don't know what America, would be the first to say that is not a free and fair election. I mean, it is mind-blowing.
J.D. Vance does say this. J.D. Vance doesn't